Tot in jou vlaktes waar ek al my drome kry. Tot in jou berge, jou riviere, waterstrome, bekoor jy my. Ek kan vir altyd net hier na jou skoonheid staan. Want waar het ek ooit so iets gewaar? Jy's beautiful vir my, dis hier by jou waar ek wil bly. Suid-Afrika, jy's my mooiste land. Suid-Afrika, ja dis jy wat my dra. Maar wat het geword van ons reënboognasie? Wat hande so vat en saam so staan. Suid-Afrika, ja ons sien in die trane. Suid-Afrika, wat rou jou wange? Wanneer sal ons leer dat ons mense, ons maak jou sien? Daar is so baie wat ek jou wil vra. Gaan ons betaal vir die letsels wat jy dra? Ek weet die plan was nooit dat ons so moet beklei my land, maar sê vir my. Ek weet dis baie lang van die hoes verby. Jou kop al zwaar my land, maar sê toch nie vir my. Wat kan van jou word my land? Suid-Afrika, jy's my mooiste land. Suid-Afrika, ja dis jy wat my dra. Maar wat het geword van ons reënboognasie? Wat hande so vat en saam so staan. Suid-Afrika, ja ons sien in die trane. Suid-Afrika, wat rou oor jou wange? Wanneer sal ons leer dat ons mense, ons maak jou sien? Dit is tyd dat ons moet hande vat en op ons knieën neerval en vrouwe God, kom red ons land. Suid-Afrika, jy's my mooiste land. Suid-Afrika, ja dis jy wat my dra. Maar wat het geword van ons reënboognasie? Wat hande so vat en saam so staan. Suid-Afrika, ja ons sien in die trane. Suid-Afrika, wat rou oor jou wange? Wanneer sal ons leer dat ons mense, ons maak jou sien? Wanneer sal ons leer dat ons mense, ons maak jou sien? Suid-Afrika.
Hey folks, let me just start off by saying, I pity the fool. I pity the fool. Well, folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. Good evening, wherever you may find yourself around the world this evening. Thanks for tuning in. Chris Wyatt here on Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel. And yes, I am wearing rugby kit, but it's American rugby kit. This is from Rugby United New York, ladies and gentlemen. Check out that really cool logo there, Rugby United New York. Yep, there you go. On the side of the hat. On the jersey, here you go. It's actually a t-shirt. So there you go. It's a Rooney. Mr. T, I pity the fool. I pity the fool. Where's Murdoch? Where's Murdoch? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that Mr. T reference from the A-team there. Welcome everybody into the chat this evening. Those who were here earlier, welcome back once again. Anna Marie Forster, I see you. Sawabona. Sawabona. Got you this time. You're not slipping by. Totenkopf, Mr. T, Top Secrets. Bonsoir, mes amis. Bonsoir. Comment vas-tu? Comment vas-tu? C'est bien? Ou non? C'est bien, n'est-ce pas? Moi aussi. Robin Dandelion is here. Hello, Robin. Good to see you. Shack Dweller's already deleting his comments. What are you doing, man? Are you out of bounds? What did you say? Let's see. Lars Solis is here with the salute. Thank you so much. Anne-Marie, powwow. Marilyn Howells, good evening. Helen Duplessis, welcome once again. Rhoda Truder, good to see you again. James Pretorius, I see a guy fed his attackers some lead before they could kick him in the head in Wisconsin. I did not see that. Wow, you guys are really watching what's going on there. Feels like a Thursday. Yeah, I know. I mentioned earlier it was Wednesday. Robin's like, I thought it was Tuesday all day. Let's see who else is here. Tian is still better than a Bulls jersey, pink or regular. Skysaper says, Guten Tag, mein Herr. Ja, guten Tag. Na, wie geht's? Geht's gut? Es geht mir ziemlich gut. Ja, also meiner Meinung nach, Mittwoch, mitten in der Woche, das ist ja immer interessant. Also wir sind auf diese Seite in Richtung vom Wochenende und die andere Seite, die Arbeit ist schon vorbei. Yeah, so I'm saying that middle of the week is always interesting on hump day, Wednesday, because the rest of the week is ahead of us to the weekend and the work is behind. Anyway, so Nico Nell, welcome, Nico. I don't think we've seen you in a while. Welcome back. Rolf Martins, Renan says, Rolf, welcome. Good to see you again. And Robin just watched that video. Yeah, Robin's usually all over that stuff, man. When people are misbehaving in the States, she knows those videos. I think Robin's probably on Twitter a lot, I'm guessing. All right, cool. Before the Germans come. Yes, before the Germans come, Mr. T, we must do this. Have you ever watched Sprockets on Saturday Night Live? Sprockets? Anyway, Nico Arnold. Good evening, Nico. How are you? Right, Nico, that looks just like the photograph I saw early in the morning when somebody was misbehaving. We shall see. Anna Forster, Ronaldo Holds did not get the memo that Mars is new Robin. I did see that Robin Island, although that's misspelled Robin there. Yeah, it's R-O-B-B-E-N. R-O-B-B-E-N. But Robin Island, yeah, it is new Robin Island, Mars. I guess he's not up on that. He wants to go to Mars, and that's where we're sending the ANC cadre, ladies and gentlemen. For those who don't know, that's the plan. We will ship the ANC cadre off to Mars on a Falcon 9 rocket on a SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule, sending them. Actually, they're going to need a different capsule. The Crew Dragon's too small for that journey. They're going to need a proper large one, even for cadres. So that's what's coming in the future. Hendo is here. Jaco Myborg, good to see you there. Nant Sasamakovich from the news. There's a sort of civil war in Wisconsin. I hear these reports. No, it's not a civil war. There's unrest because someone who's black was killed. Meanwhile, as I showed yesterday, white American children being targeted by black Americans, and we're not burning cities down. We all people, not white people, black people, white people, Hispanic people, Asians, we're not burning cities down over the vile murder of people based on the color of their skin. So why do people do this in Wisconsin? Because it's not the nonsense that you're being told about in the media, the so-called race war and systemic discrimination. No, it's not that. That's the leftist narrative to undermine the presidency of Orange Man Bad. Speaking of orange, New York, Orange Man Bad. By the way, these are the colors of New York City, these blue and this orange, which comes from, of course, the House of Orange, the Dutch royal family that ruled the Netherlands at the time that New Amsterdam was founded. Of course, New York is famously originally known as New Amsterdam, ladies and gentlemen. Robin says, been researching for 12 years. I'm what people refer to as a tinfoil wearing, well, I wouldn't say idiot. Come on, Robin. You seem to be pretty switched on there. Pretty switched on. Let's see. But anyway, so I'll leave that there. Rolf says, what's going on in Belarus? Belarus. They poisoned a guy. Russians interfering in yet another neighboring state's affairs for a place that they consider to be an integral part of Russia. Belarus, White Russia. White Russia. We can't say that. That's why you have to say Belarus. Of course, the proper name for that area is White Russia. That's what it was called always. Lynn Nangel's here. Hi, Lynn. Good to see you. Hi, Robin. Lynn's playing around with her usernames there. That's cool. Folks, welcome back. So earlier we came to a realization in the stream. I was asked a question about genealogy. And next thing I know, I was talking about it for like half an hour. We lost some of the audience, so I'm sorry if you were bored. But those who stayed found it very interesting, I believe. So I've decided to do a segment on family history and genealogy. A live stream segment, not prepared videos. This will give people a chance to ask questions and maybe even occasionally take a call or two. And I'm going to come up with a name for that, and I'm going to start doing genealogy, and that'll be one of the segments on my channel. We already know I have a segment on rugby, and I have politics. Now I have a segment on U.S. politics, and so we'll do a segment on rugby. Hey, check this out, ladies and gentlemen. I went looking to give some little swag for the folks who are going to volunteer. The Cowboys are going to help out for the trip to Wyoming. Check out what I got. Here you go. Look at that. U.S. Army War College class of 2020. Is it focusing? It's not focusing very well. There you go. A little further back. 2020. Look at that torch of knowledge. Yeah, look at that. Isn't that cool? All right, that's the front side. Check out the back side. They do these in the metallic color, but also they do them like this, inlaid with color. Ooh, there you go. There's a little shield from the Army War College. U.S. Army War College. Awesome, huh? No, it's not silver. It's just I don't know. It's probably iron or steel. It's probably steel with the coloring on it. No, but they look pretty cool. It's a challenge coin. So I've got these to give to the guys out there. So yeah, normally put it in your hand like that when you award it, and you shake someone's hand, and then they transfer it that way. It might be a little bit challenging with COVID, unless of course we transfer the coin and we immediately pull out the Purell and wipe out the corona. Hey folks, did you catch the big pool party in Wuhan? Apparently there's a lot going on in Wuhan. They're getting down in Wuhan. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Wuhan is COVID free. So they're having a big party and sticking it in your face and my face. Talk about cheeky, arrogant. Wait a second. I can't say that because that'll make me a xenophobe or a racist. Nope, bad form, ladies and gentlemen. And when people misbehave like that and wave that nonsense in people's faces, you're welcome to say things about them. So there you go. Totenkopf says, very cool. Shack Dweller likes it too. America's on the brink of collapse. Okay, so we're already there with the nonsense. All right, alert. There you go, folks. My moderators, just so you have a heads up, we've already started. America's not on the verge of collapse. Do I look like I'm on the verge of collapse? No, not at all. And I am in America. Don't believe the nonsense. All right. No hidden profile. No, I got that, Lynn. I got that. Just saying it's different. Bosch Seber says, it's been a sad day for Namibia. We lost two sons of the land, Dr. Jacob van Zyl, former NASA director of Solar System, and Dirk Mudge. Oh, Dirk Mudge passed away? I did not know that. Oh, Bosch Seber, I'm sorry to hear that. Yes, the Democratic Turnhalle Alliance. Wow, that was a party formed a long time ago, back in the 70s. The DTA was formed. Wow, my condolences to Namibia. I wonder how many people will mourn their passing. Dirk Mudge. I'm not familiar with Jacob van Zyl, but I do know about Dirk Mudge. I hope it was natural causes and not the Rona. Yep. All right. Very thoughtful of you, Lynn. Wear gloves. Dirk Mudge. Yep. Yeah, Helen again. I think so. Yep. Don't worry. It won't last long. My moderators take care of it if I suspect it's true. But yeah, it's pretty cool. So the idea is to hand these out as kind of swag to the folks who are volunteering to help out. So I picked these up. It's kind of cool, nice little thing. Challenge coins is a tradition that started in the military. Rolf, don't engage. You're feeding trolls. Don't engage, Rolf. So the challenge coin is a tradition that started, I don't know when it started, but I know that by the mid-1980s is when it started to take hold in the military, the U.S. Army initially. And what would happen is that they weren't really called challenge coins at first. They were called commander's coins. So the commander's coin, how did America become an English-speaking country? Oh, that's actually a fair question. So I'll get to that in just a moment, many things. So the commander's coins were handed to people and awarded for excellence. So when I was enlisted in Germany in a signal battalion, I did really well on exercises, performed well, and we'd have ceremonies every month. Awards would go out, actually retirement, PCS, or permanent change of station awards. You move to another place, and awards for excellence. And among the awards for excellence were these commander's coins. And I have several of these for good performance. I'd be called up, Private Wyatt, and walk up, render a salute to the commander, and they'd award you a coin, and they'd say what you did it for. And they were cherished. I still have those coins. They're in the basement in a tub. I'm going to put them in a box eventually, the shadow box. I'm working on that. So, yeah. So the commander's coins. But then at some point, people started conflating commander's coins with challenge coins, which I think was always the thing. So the deal with the challenge coin is when you've been awarded a coin, you're supposed to always have the coin in your pocket. That's the theory. So when you meet someone somewhere, you go, hey, from the unit that you were in, show me your coin. And if you don't have your coin, guess who buys the booze? The person without the coin. I've never really been big on the challenge coin thing. To me, these are commander's coins, but they make them for all kinds of things. You can buy them personally. These are produced for the graduates of the class of 2020. These will be memorable because this is the Corona class. This is the Wuhan coronavirus COVID-19 class of 2020 that was forced to vacate the classrooms at the Army War College in Root Hall and do distance education starting in was it March? They already started. I think it was in March they started doing it. Yeah, so it would be very interesting. And this is also, for me, my last Army War College class as a serving active officer. I didn't teach the whole year. In fact, I only taught at the very beginning, and I worked with students who arrived, the international students, particularly the African students when they first arrived. So there you go. Cool beans. All right, so that's a challenge coin, and I've got a bunch of them. But the thing is, it's gotten so bad now that commanders just carry them, and they're expected to give them out everywhere. And so people just collect them. They have these collections. For me, most of my early coins were a consequence of performance and excellence, and so I take great pride in getting them. I have one numbered by the commander of the 1st Armor Division, and it's numbered with my name engraved on it. I have several with my name engraved on it. Those are really cool. That's for excellence. They make those ahead of time. They send over to get etched. It's got your number on it, and you cherish that. So those are really important to me. But now people just hand them out like bubble gum. But this is important. Civilians really find these cool, and this is unique. This is not something you're going to find anywhere else. So I've got this for those guys. It ought to be pretty cool. Anyway, so back to the question. The Many Sings to Us did ask a legitimate question here. So where did that question go? How did America become an English-speaking country? Well, the United States, as it is today, was originally comprised of 13 colonies. That included what had been a Dutch colony in New York or New Amsterdam. It included what had been a Swedish colony in Delaware. And then it included English colonies in Virginia, in Massachusetts Bay Colony, and then the spread out from there, which created additional colonies. So in total, there were 13 colonies. That's why we're called the colonies here in North America that eventually were under the control of the British. The British took control of New Amsterdam, kind of like they took control of Cape Town in the Western Cape from the Dutch. And so New Amsterdam became New York eventually, and it became the colony of New York. Virginia was always ours. So those were the 13 original colonies. There's more there, of course, and I mentioned them all: New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, South Carolina, North Carolina. So the 13 colonies. Many of the settlers in those colonies, of course, quite naturally were English. They came from England. They came from England or Scots-Irish, coming from Northern Ireland and the western part of Scotland. And so that's where many of those original immigrants came from. But as I mentioned, Delaware, we had a small number of Swedes and Dutch who settled there, and they formed the basis of that. That's why in Delaware you have a city called Christiana, which is named after the Swedish queen. So there you go. English colonies were ruled by England, so the de facto language was English. However, at the outset, when we declared our independence in 1776 and we actually earned it in 1783 with the Peace of Paris, what happened is that the United States had large populations of German-speaking residents who became citizens. And this is because the Rhineland-Palatinate, the western portion of Germany, that's in Germany still today, on the west side of the Rhine River, the Rhineland-Palatinate, or Rhineland-Pfalz as we say in German, large numbers of immigrants left that area because of opportunity and religious oppression, but also German speakers further south in Switzerland also came and joined. And so you had Anabaptists and Baptists who came here. You had the Amish, the Mennonites who came, and you also had lots of other German speakers who came here. That's predominantly where they came from, but not exclusively. And so they settled in Pennsylvania, they settled in Maryland, in Virginia, and we had large populations of German speakers. And German was spoken as frequently as English. In many places, English wasn't spoken or only spoken in official handling, dealing with local officials, magistrates, and judges and administrators, things like that. So what happened was that early on, the decision was that should the United States adopt German as its language. There was a vote, I believe, in the Continental Congress, or it must have been after the Continental Congress already, but there was a vote, and apparently it came down to one deciding vote, and America decided not to pick German as a national language, official language. But we never picked English to be our official language either, so we don't have an official language. It's embarrassing. We're the only developed, industrialized nation that doesn't have an official language, so kind of sad. So, okay, so before that, everyone was speaking different languages, Chris. Yeah, and people, well, primarily German and English. But there were also people speaking Dutch in New Amsterdam. There were also people speaking Swedish in Delaware. But the number of people speaking Swedish in Delaware was like less than 1,000 total, the entire history. So it was, but now they propagated and had more families, but over time wound up speaking English. The Dutch quickly learned English. It's very easy for them to do, and they quickly switched over. Oh, okay. So Lynn is asking me to explain what a troll is. Okay, so I'll explain what a troll is. A troll is someone who comes into the channel and says things to disrupt the chat, to distract from the topic, or to enrage or irritate those who are participating in the chat or watching the show. So we do get that here occasionally, and we boot people. So some people like to tread the line, and many things to us right now is treading the line about being a troll or not being a troll. So I'm being very tolerant at the moment, but we've just demonstrated lately that we're not tolerating this nonsense anymore. Last night, I had someone, when I only had 3 people watching my stream on the Republican National Convention, come in and just start typing all kinds of nonsense about Trump and about this, about that, unrelated to the conversation, unrelated to the speaker that I was streaming on TV. And so it was clearly an attempt. It was a stupid attempt. I mean, there's 3 people here, so who do you think you're irritating? So I timed the person out to give them a warning. For 5 minutes, they couldn't chat. Came back, started spewing the same nonsense, and then were just banned from the channel. So, but people go back, they change their username, and they come back later on. So anyway, so what's with Bongani? Where's Bongani? Let me catch. Oh, Bongani's here. Bongani and Nguyen's here. Bongani, did you get your kit yet? Has it arrived from Ronaldo? I'm curious to see if it's arrived. I received this shirt today. I ordered a jersey, which isn't here, but I got this shirt almost 2 weeks after I paid for it. It's kind of irritating. When a settler becomes a colonist, very important. When does a settler become a colonist? Well, a settler is a colonist. They're synonymous in many ways. You guys are teasing many things to us, saying I'm not a troll. That's what a troll would say. Robin says, have you seen the KFC ad? They removed finger licking from the slogan because of the coronavirus. Oh, no, I did, but that's actually smart. I hope it will come back at some point, but finger licking good. Yeah, that's not, well, you think about that. What about a whole brand in South Africa? What are you going to do with a store called Chicken Licking? Chicken licking. But of course, you know, the licking is licking the chicken, not your fingers. So yeah, but I get that. But KFC has been changing its branding so much over the years. They do homage to the Colonel, but the way they do it is kind of weird with all kinds of people playing the Colonel. This hat keeps looking crooked here. It's driving me nuts. Okay, does it look better? There we go. Anyway, yeah, so I did not see that, Robin, but I'm not surprised. Actually smart on their part. You know that Corona, the Mexican beer, changed their name. It's not Corona anymore. I don't know what they're called now, but they did that early on because of the negative association with it. Tian says, I'll be hiding in the corner. I've seen irritated military officers enough times to know when to hide. Okay, people are agreeing with Bongani, but what was, okay, let me catch up. There's Robert Z.A. There's Bongani. Okay, Andre Jacobs is here. Americans don't speak English, they speak American. We speak English. It's our version of English. It's better. We actually use the letters. You know, we try to pronounce them. Unlike color, C-O-L-O-U-R. That's French, couleur. It's color, C-O-L-O-R, color. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, it is a traffic signal, not a robot. R2-D2 is a robot. I'm just saying. I'm going to get flamed by the South Africans now. It's a robot. It's a robot. Let's see. Tina Cook, what happened to the American Indian languages? They still exist, Tina. Some are gone. Some American, Native American languages have disappeared because the groups have gone away. But many Native American languages still exist. And it's up to the group or tribe to ensure that the language survives. But we all lose something when we lose languages. Languages can be unique in the way people express themselves, the way they formulate thought and then express it. So it's a shame. The number of languages around the world are diminishing all the time, and it's really sad to see that languages disappear. But the Native American languages, many of them still around. People still speak them. It's awesome. During the Second World War, we had the Navajo code talkers, who were called code talkers, but they didn't use a code. All they used was Navajo. The Japanese had no idea how to translate Navajo. There were no textbooks on it. It wasn't written down. They didn't have any experience with the Navajo. So we had volunteer Navajo soldiers who were writing messages in Navajo, and then a Navajo soldier on the other end would receive the message over the radio or a note, and they would be able to translate it into English for their commanders. So yeah, we used a language, not even a code, and they were called the code talkers. They were amazing, unbelievably brave soldiers. They made a big difference in the Second World War. Many sings to us, and all Black Americans lost their native tongue when they were shipped to USA, or are there still some who speak it? That's a good question. Many sings to us. No. No people who came here during the historical period of slavery, if that's what you're talking about, and I think that is, because we have Africans who've come here since the 1990s and 80s who still speak the language from back home. You know, people from Malawi or Zambia who speak Chichewa who've migrated to America, of course, they still speak it. But there are no African languages that survive the arrival for several reasons. It's not as if people went to a whole village, grabbed all those people, shipped them across the Atlantic, dropped them in the Mediterranean, dropped them in Brazil, or dropped them in one place in the States, and then all those people could communicate. No, people were divided up, separated. They came from many different groups who spoke different languages. They were sold as chattel, and then they were shipped on boats, and they didn't have a common language. Now, Bantu languages are similar, but that doesn't mean they're the same. And so they would arrive, and the people who had arrived before them were already speaking English. No one else would understand the language they had, so they had to learn English in order to get along, to get food, to be there, to understand instructions. And so those languages were lost over time. Some families tried to retain that and inculcate that in their progeny, but that was discouraged by and large. Now, there is an exception. There was a group of escaped slaves in South Carolina, in the Carolinas, in the coastal islands. And so on those coastal islands, they developed a Creole, and it's called Gullah, G-U-L-L-A-H, Gullah. And Gullah is an amalgamation of some African languages from West Africa and English. And Gullah is unfortunately dying as well. It's not well known, but it's actually a language of its own. It's a pidgin originally, but it's developed into its own language. So Gullah is still spoken by a small handful of people. So then you also have a number of Black Americans who spoke French, because they were in Haiti, and many people fled from Haiti or left Haiti when all those things happened, and many relocated to the South, particularly in Louisiana, and so some of them came and spoke French as a first language, even though it's not an African language, so to speak. So there you go, many things. All right, so what else we got here? Larsala says, how does an American recognize the etymology of their words? Being able to recognize the root adds the depth. Well, you have to learn and study. That's how you learn. That's how you know it. The Flying Boar is just given a super chat of $5. I'm going to catch up to that very soon. Flying Boar, I'm going to address that because that's a good question. American has dodgy pronunciations. Easy, Hendo. Easy, man. Hang on a second. Let me get back. Yeah, so I guess no one speaks English except those in England. No, we speak English. The Indians speak English. South Africans speak English. The English in England also changes because migrants come there too. Variable visions here. Black olives matter. B-O-M. Bomb. Please show us your shirt, says Lynn. I think I did already, but maybe I'm behind the chat. So it's Rugby United New York. There you go. It's a t-shirt. Well, with the cap, it says Rugby United on the back, and just like it does here on the side of the hat. Rugby United. Using the colors of New York, formerly New Amsterdam. The navy blue and the orange. Tina, good question. What did Tina ask? I missed the question. Tina says, what happened to the American Indians? Already answered that question. Okay. Let's see. Kentucky Fried Papagayi. KFP. Good stuff. Opinion on Joe Jorgensen and the Libertarian Party. Carlo, I'm not familiar with Joe Jorgensen. Is Joe Jorgensen the presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party this year? The Libertarian Party is a little too laissez-faire for me. They believe in all kinds of things that are a little too generous and liberal for me, but many things that libertarians agree with are things that conservatives have in common. The problem is that libertarians have no traction. They never get more than a couple million votes in a presidential election at most, usually a million or less. People just don't follow them very much, so that's their challenge. Let's see. I hate the spelling correction function. Yeah, it can be annoying. Marcellus, how does an American recognize the etymology? Yeah. Okay, so you have to study it. I mean, I know the etymology of my surname. I know the etymology of many words in English. But the way to do it is when you learn, after you learn a word or you're curious, just go to a dictionary and look up and find the origin. The dictionary tells you the origin of the word. Etymology of words is something very important to me. It's interesting. So, for instance, my surname. Let me help you out with that. I haven't forgot your super chat there, Flying Boar. I'm going to get back to it. So, Wyatt. Okay, there are different stories on the etymology of it, but here's the true story. Okay, so Wyatt was originally Vido, something like W-I-D-O, which is an old Danish word, Vido. Whoops, can't use that. I'll ruin my board. Hang on. I'm going to write this for you guys. By the way, South Africa, yes, my Moisterland, South Africa. Anyway, just thought I'd share that really quickly since we listened to Giselle at the beginning with South Africa. So, Vido. So this was the original pronunciation of Wyatt, Vito, which means a forester or someone who works in the forest. And the reason for that is my ancestors were Danes who cut timber. So what happened is that they were Vikings and they kept sailing up the Seine River and sacking Paris and burning Paris. But then one of the French kings, I'm just going to take this off because I'm too distracted. One of the French kings decided that he had enough of these Vikings burning Paris and robbing from the churches and harming people. So he decided that he would give them land. So the French king gave them a part of France where Celts lived that was known later as the land of the Northmen, Normandy. And so they settled there. And within 100 years, they had gone from being pagan, well, some were Christian, but pagan and Christian Scandinavians, Vikings, to being, and also always traveling everywhere, to being sedentary knights and nobles with large estates in Normandy. They were speaking French exclusively. They had abandoned their Danish, their Frisian, their Norwegian, their High German, all gone. They spoke French. They were Roman Catholics, and so they were Frenchified. But by blood, by DNA, they were overwhelmingly still Scandinavian. And that is because when they got married, they would send for wives to the old country. And the wives would be brought down, they'd marry them, and then the next generation would marry there. So they kept their DNA largely Scandinavian. Very little French DNA was intermixed. Those people, they were speaking a Germanic language from the Viking languages they spoke, Frisian or Danish or whatever it was, Old Danish. So the German languages have a very different pronunciation than the Romance languages, which is what French is. French was originally a Germanic language. Of course, French is from the Franks or German-speaking peoples who came from Central Europe. And you have two Frankfurts. Frankfurt is the crossing of the Franks. So you talk about etymology, you get less than etymology here. So Frank were the Franks. Furt, F-U-R-T, is a ford, a crossing. So Frankfurt, you have Frankfurt an der Oder, which is the Oder River in the east, and that forms the border between the eastern part of Germany today and what used to be Silesia and Pomerania, but now it's part of Poland. Frankfurt on the Oder, that was the first major crossing of thousands of Franks coming west, and then you had Frankfurt am Main, the Main River, which is in the western part of Germany. That's the Frankfurt we know about where the international airport is. That's the one everyone's heard of, Frankfurt. So that's the other crossing. They crossed those two places in thousands and thousands over a short period of time and moved into the northern part of France by Lille and worked their way down. They were Germanic speakers, and they settled there. But then the Romans came later on, and the Romans changed the language to a Romance language. And what happens when it became a Romance language, there's a difference, a shift in the pronunciation. People in Romance languages don't pronounce V's and W's like Volkswagen. They don't pronounce it that way. They don't say Wienen or Weimar. They don't pronounce things that way. By the same token, Germanic speakers tend to pronounce all of the letters that they spell because they make good use of their energy, whereas the Romance language, in French in particular, they do not pronounce some letters. I don't know why they use them then. So what happened is that Vito became, over time, you ready for this? This is the etymology. So Vito became, here you go. And this will make sense when you hear it. This one will make the most sense. Vito became Guyot, ladies and gentlemen. Guyot, G-U-Y-O-T. G-U-Y-O-T, there you go. Guyot. So Vito became Guyot, right? Now, in 1066, because they had claims on the English crown, and the king died, and Harold Godwinson assumed the crown, and he wasn't in that family, but he claimed it. There were lots of attempts to take the English crown. And so what happened was, well, the multiple crowns in England, because you had Mercia and Northumbria and all these places. But what happened is that the Norwegians invaded in the north, and they were met at the Battle of Stamford Bridge by the army that Harold Godwinson marched rapidly to the north to defeat them, and they defeated them. And then they had to march all the way back to the south of England to meet at the Battle of Hastings because the Normans assembled an army and came across the English Channel. When they arrived in the south, it was a near thing. Harold Godwinson could have won the day, or it could have been William the Bastard, who became William the Conqueror, based on this. So the Normans won the day, but just won the day. When Harold Godwinson was killed, the army kind of melted away and got slaughtered. And then the Normans now took over governorship of what was England, and then Wales, of course, as well. And so the Normans came. With them, they brought the trappings of the French court, the use of French as the official language amongst the courtiers and for diplomacy and for government. But most of the people living in England were Anglo-Saxons or Scandinavians and spoke Germanic languages, so there was a conflict. Now, while France, The Franks, their language changed and they became wholeheartedly Romance speakers. The Anglo-Saxons in England were much more stubborn, as were the Celts in Wales and Scotland and Ireland. And they resisted. And so what developed in England was French greatly altered English, and French things came in. So in France, for instance, in French, you have one word to tell you what a pig is, to tell you the different types of pork, things like that. You say pork, P-O-R-C. That's it. The pig is pork. The meat, pork chops are pork. It's all pork. But in English, we have swine, we have pig, we have pork, we have all these different words we use because some come from Scandinavian languages, they come from Old English, they come from French, and all of this is incorporated in. And that happens in a lot of things. So as a consequence, Lynn just became a member. Lynn, I thought you were already a member. Well, thank you very much for becoming a member. Cool beans. Thank you. You get a salute, proper one. Thank you, Lynn. So what happens is that English becomes greatly enriched from a vocabulary standpoint. We add tens and thousands and hundreds of thousands of words which are incorporated from French. But the English wind up with a Frenchified spelling of a lot of words, and Americans found that to be silly and useless. And so we modified that once we had colonies in the Americas. Instead of wasting letters for color, C-O-L-L-O-U-R, we changed it to C-O-L-O-R, for example. Nico Nell has just become a member of the channel. Well, thank you so much, Nico. There's your hand salute. Thank you so much for that, folks. Wow. Not even trolling for memberships, and people are signing up for memberships. Thank you so much, guys. Cool beans. Appreciate becoming members of the channel. Lynn, you've already been a member, so that's cool. I don't know if it was an upgrade or a return. Yeah, so that's what happened. So, by the way, at the Battle of Hastings, my 34th great-grandfather was William the Conqueror, known as William the Bastard, later William the Conqueror. And then his opponent, Harold Godwinson, also my 34th great-grandfather, since we were talking about genealogy earlier. So that's a little bit about that. So etymology, it's important. Anyway, I didn't finish the story about Wyatt. So what happens is that the Anglo-Saxons and who were in England, and my ancestors from Normandy, there was an Admiral Adam Guyot. Adam Guyot, like Adam, the first man. Adam Guyot was one of the nobles who put together a ship, built a ship to take William's army across to land on the beaches in the south of England to go to the Battle of Hastings. He was awarded with an estate taken from Anglo-Saxons in Kent in the southeast of England. And over the course of a few centuries, the Anglo-Saxons had difficulty pronouncing Guyot because it's French. Ugh. They look at it and go, Guyot. Anyway, so over time, Guyot became Wyatt. And there are several common spellings of Wyatt. And I'll show you a few of those, okay? And mine, I already spelled that one, sorry. W-Y, okay, W. Okay, well, these are the three most common. I'm drawing a blank right now as I'm trying to explain this. So Vito, which was Danish and Viking, became Guyot, which was French, which became Wyatt over time. This is the most common spelling of the name in the United Kingdom and in North America. And this is another spelling, Wyatt. This is the third spelling, W-I-A-T-T, W-I-O-T-T. And there are other spellings, but these W-Y-A-T-T is the most common. So Wyatt, the first Wyatt to come to the Americas was Sir Francis Wyatt, who was the first royal governor of the Jamestown colony of Virginia. And the Flying Board just gave another super chat, and he made a very good point, which I'll get back to. So the first royal governor of Jamestown colony of Virginia was Sir Francis Wyatt, my 17th great uncle. His brother was the progenitor of most of the Wyatts in North America. Today, there are about 90,000 people with the surname Wyatt in North America, mostly in the U.S., a few in Canada, and 75,000 of them are white, and about 15,000 are black or mixed race. And so you're about 90,000 of us, many of us related by blood, including those who are black or mixed race. Yep, so there you have it, folks. And that's the name. And that's there's etymology right there, because the question was asked about etymology. I think it was Lars Salas a bit ago. All right. So Anna Marie Forster, I made supper, not dinner. My man don't like dinner. Lynn says, please play Side Vest. I'll get to that. Corona beer is now called Coronita. Is that true? Andre Jacobs, American technology smoke signals. Let's see. Oh, shoot. Something just jumped ahead of me again there. Wow, really? Okay. Chris Wyatt could have Viking heritage. I do have Viking heritage. Hey, right, Reverend Rawhide. I don't know if you missed anything because I'm so far behind the chat telling stories. I got to catch up here. The French did not have a rule. We don't negotiate with terrorists. What? They just gave the terrorists some land. Exactly. And then they stopped burning Paris. They weren't terrorists. It's my ancestors. Okay, so Andre, okay. All right, you're treading on the edge there, Many Sings. If you think you got away because you got my attention with legitimate questions and now you're going to start playing games, don't think it. Lynn, okay, thank you. Unemployment is 45%. I suspect it's higher in South Africa. Let's see. My mouth hangs open. All the knowledge Chris has says Viking Boar. Thank you. Nico Nell, we already discussed that. Robin said that's true. Thank you, Robin. Sasa Markovic, my name just became so boring. It just means son of Marco, protector of the nation. Yes, it does. Vich is a patronym, just like son or sen. Anderson. Markovic is the same thing. It's son of. Smitrovich, son of Smitro. Yep, that's what it is. Those are patronyms. Yep, absolutely. Named after the father. And now in Iceland, they name it after the father or the mother. You've got both. You've got Helen Dotterson, things like that. So yeah, it's just crazy. And it's hard to figure out who's who related in Iceland. But they're so small, they know everybody. So Lynn says third subscription. That's what I thought, Lynn. I don't know why. I got you. You've got 3 subscriptions. Yeah, that's right. Yep. Didn't Teddy Roosevelt also push for the simplification? I wasn't trying to reveal that, Lynn. Simplification language. I don't know if he did. Okay. Lars Salas says the Chinese script writes ideas, not pronunciation. The symbol for pork will be understood as pig, meat in any language. That's why Japanese can read Chinese script, but they can't talk. Gotcha. Flying Boar, Queen is not even English. She's German. What was the Flying Boar's first one? I'm going to get back to that first super chat. I forgot that. South Africa will soon lose Afrikaans the way things are going. I disagree with that, Flying Boar. First off, in order for that to happen, you have to, what happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin, I don't have an answer for that right now. Opinion, the Young Americans Foundation, not impressed, Carlo. Well, you're really interested in politics, Carlo, U.S. politics. Afrikaans is not going away. First off, it's the second most widely spoken second language in South Africa. So there you go. You've got, it's also the second most widely spoken first language in South Africa. You have Zulu, and then you have Afrikaans, and then Xhosa. Xhosa comes in third, but Afrikaans comes in second. You've got about 2.8 million white South Africans whose first language is Afrikaans. And then you have 6.8 to 8 million colored South Africans whose first language is Afrikaans. You have approximately 190,000 black South Africans whose first language is Afrikaans. Oh, yeah. Yeah, surprise, surprise, surprise. Black South Africans whose first language grow up speaking Afrikaans. Yeah, that's right. Ooh, funny that. And then also you have about 240,000 Indians whose first language is Afrikaans. You add that all together, you're north of 10, 11 million people who speak it as a first language, mother tongue, second most widely spoken language in South Africa as a mother tongue. So it's not going to go away anytime soon. Even if you chased all the white Afrikaans speakers out of South Africa, which is not going to happen without bloodshed, you're still going to have millions of colored South Africans who speak Afrikaans and some black and also some Indians. But the thing is, it is under assault. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And then Flying Boar said the Queen is not even English. She's German. Yes, she is of German descent. The House of Mountbatten, as they call themselves, actually the House of Hanover, descended from a German line of princes in the northern part of Germany. Yep, that is true. Whoa, lots of comments here. Let me catch up on that. Okay, Lezan is here. Hey, Lezan, welcome. Good to see you here. Do you think au pairing after high school in another country like somewhere in the U.S. or Europe is a good idea? I do, Carlo. Au pairing is a time-honored tradition. So we had Marley's on the channel a couple months ago from no profanity meant to offend anyone here, but the non-Afrikaans speakers won't be offended. My folk Marley's. My folk Marley's. If you saw that viral video of the young lady in Namibia who ran her bicycle into a rugby goalpost, she was a guest on my channel. Marley's was on here. Lovely young lady. She's an au pair in the Netherlands. She should be home now. Supposed to have come home in August, but we don't know the status, if there's any flights. She probably had to fly to Germany to get to Namibia because you can't go through South Africa now. So I don't know if Marley's is home, but she was in the Netherlands as an au pair. Au pair is an excellent way to get a foreign experience, to get some responsibility, maybe a little bit of pocket money and travel and that sort of thing. Unfortunately for Marlies, most of her time in the Netherlands was affected by Corona, so she didn't really get to see Europe, which is really unfortunate, but she has the hunger to go back and do it. Yes, I think au pairing is a good thing to do. It's fantastic, and it's a good opportunity for South Africans to do it. Yep. Tina Cook, do you see the Russians have asked the BRIC countries not to use the dollar in trading? Okay. They can ask. Ain't going to work. What do they want them to use? The ruble? Want them to use the euro? Maybe the euro, but ain't going to work. When you're already a moderator. Okay, I got it. That's because you got this here. All right. Rolf. Oh, okay. Sorry. What's this? What is this? I missed something here. So, okay. Well, we don't say Red Indians. That's an offensive term. Many sings to us. He says, so Native Americans speak what language? He says Red Indians. That's an offensive term. People don't like that. That's actually offensive. Native Americans speak English, but many of them speak their own first language. Anna Marie, my maiden name is Hagen, pronounced Hagen, Irish father. Hagen? Okay. Viking says, I think Chris will be any radio presenter's nightmare when it comes to knowledge. What's his radio? Watch out, it's Radio 702. Hey, Paulie, good to see you there. Okay, William Bota. Afrikaans is the third fastest growing language in the world according to the Direct Afrikaans dictionary that keeps being updated monthly with new words. The language itself is growing, but the question is you got to have speakers. That's the thing, Willem Bota. Yeah. Hendo says, these idiots fail to realize that by assaulting Afrikaans will eventually get very strong reaction from the minorities. Not just that, this is the irony of the African National Congress. Their purported position with Afrikaans is that it's the language of the colonizers, that it's the language of the oppressors. Well, the problem with that narrative is Afrikaans is derived from Dutch and Malay and Khoi and San and other African languages. And while it's a Germanic language, it has heavy influence from other languages, which has affected it. And it is a language that developed in Africa. So it's an African language. So when you say the language of the oppressors, that's a problem, given that most of the first language speakers aren't even white South Africans. So that narrative falls flat. And then if you want to make other arguments against the language, it's just silly. It's just silly. But they do it. So they talk about the language of the oppressors. But what language are they abandoning Afrikaans for? When Stellenbosch switched its medium of instruction, did it switch to Xhosa? Did it switch to Khoi or San language? Did it switch to Venda? No, it switched to English. English is a minority language in South Africa. Only 6% of South Africans speak it as a first language. Shocking, isn't it? You think of South Africa, you think of English, but only about 6 to 8% of South Africans speak it as a first language, ladies and gentlemen. It is widely spoken as a second language, however, and that's what they want to do. So they want to force people to go to university in a second language, and I understand the logic because English is international, but there is a basis for maintaining universities that are in the diversity of languages in South Africa, particularly ones that are already established, like Stellenbosch, an Afrikaans medium language. Taking Afrikaans out of Stellenbosch University of Pretoria was moronic, and it was bigoted, and it was race-based, and that's why they did it, and it's stupid, and it undermines South Africa's fabric. Rolf, why is it an offensive term? Because Native Americans found it offensive, and most people have abandoned that term decades ago as a consequence. You can study Afrikaans at Moscow. Andre, you can study Afrikaans at UCLA, the University of California, Los Angeles, and many universities in the United States. Many things didn't know it was offensive. No, it's all right. Many things. That's why I told you it's offensive. It's not offensive to me. I don't use it. It's just, but people find offensive. Yeah. Part of it had to do with the fact that Indians aren't really red, and people took a section of that. It also comes from a time that people had very different social interaction relationships. Okay, education was not too bad, but why did the ANC not approve it? Why did they close so many training centers? It's not just that, Robert Zede. The problem with education in South Africa is multifaceted. The ANC not only failed to improve Bantu education, they damaged and weakened all education across the board by interfering with the universities, by changing languages as a median, putting many people speaking a first language into a second language, putting them at a great disadvantage by making all the universities, most of the universities, English. So that was one thing they did. They also failed to provide education for primary school students and secondary school students. They awarded race-based tenders to BEE certified companies who failed to deliver services with building proper sanitation, leaving pit latrines in many schools, or building schools, or even delivering electricity to them, blackboards, not let alone laptops and computers and things like that. And they also famously failed to deliver textbooks. BEE certified companies got massive tenders to deliver textbooks to the Eastern Cape and then just stole the money. No one went to jail, no prosecution, no outrage, but this is what happens. So they did that. And then one of the worst things they did from the outset in 1995 is the ruling African National Congress went on a witch hunt to chase white educators out of education. Because apparently they were offended that white teachers would be teaching people of color. I know personally a woman who was an Afrikaans speaking first language, ethnic German, but Afrikaans speaking first language, who was teaching in the Western Cape. And she taught black and colored students at school as well as white in the school that she was in. It was already integrated by this time. Apartheid came and she was pressured to take a severance package to leave. And they made her unwelcome at the school along with all the other white teachers and forced them out of the business. So she took her severance and she used it to start a knick-knack shop, a gift shop, which is when I met her and she was selling gifts in Stellenbosch. So she was pushed out of work and she was qualified. And what do we replace those people with? Unqualified, often uneducated people who got the job simply because they knew someone. They weren't qualified to be teachers. And what happens to education? It declines as a consequence. And add into that the fact that it is very much the norm in places like KwaZulu-Natal, KZN, for young girls, 11, 12, 13 years old, prepubescent or recently pubescent girls, in order to get their grades, the expectation is they have sex with their male teachers. Now, add that vile and disgusting reality. We're not talking about one or two. We're talking about tens of thousands of girls this happens to. Add to that the reality that at one point, male teachers in public education in KZN were 75% HIV positive. I don't know what the current figure is because the government doesn't bother to release that data anymore, but I'm talking about 15, 20 years ago. 75%. 3 out of 4 male teachers in KwaZulu-Natal who were teaching in public schools were HIV positive, and many of them were sleeping with little girls, making them pregnant, causing social, emotional damages to them, lifelong scarring, physical scarring from taking their virginity, transferring sexually transmitted infections like HIV. Yeah. Sad, pathetic. Add all of this together, plus this top-down paternalistic approach that the ANC decides what the curriculum is, and they alter the curriculum to lie about South Africa's history, about its politics, and also dumb down. So what they started getting very quickly was diminishing returns. Instead of getting improved educational scores and higher standards, it was clear that we were headed the other direction in South Africa with lower standards and poorer scores. And it looks like my voice is a little bit behind, so I'm going to restart my camera, folks. Sorry about that, but it's better to restart it than have you struggling to watch me. So the microphone will still be on, but now the camera's off. Give me just a moment there. All right. Okay, there we go. Right. Okay, I'm back. That looks good. Let's see what it looks like in the stream. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, so thanks. Sorry about that, folks. All right. I've been incredibly patient, Robin and Hendo and my other moderators. I'll continue to be patient, but if you see behavior that warrants a timeout, go ahead and do it. I'm just giving you you've got the hammer, because I'm seeing a lot of effort here to distract from the conversation by having a conversation. This isn't Tinder. This isn't a Yahoo chat room. If you want to come to the channel and watch this channel, you can, or I'll take you out of chat. This back and forth thing. So anyway, so back to this. So that's the deal on education. And they've destroyed education. They've absolutely destroyed it, the ANC. Instead of improving it, they made it far worse. And they've lowered the standards. So they, instead of keeping the standards, the scores higher so that people are qualified, when they were embarrassed that so few people were passing, what they did is they lowered the scores. And they lied. So by lowering the scores, you have more people graduate because they've actually failed, but you've given them a degree. Lynn, just subscribe. Again, thank you, Lynn. I don't know why it's coming up again. Was that intentional or unintentional? But by lowering the standards, more people pass. But they're not qualified. They're not prepared to go to university. They're not prepared for life. Many of them are functionally illiterate, and they've got high school graduation. They've got the matric, and they can go to university. It's disgraceful. And you don't empower or lift anyone up by lowering standards and lowering expectations. That is soft bigotry. That is the diminished expectations. That's the bigotry of low expectations, what that is. And you get low results, and that's what's happened. Lots of teachers in Namibia left South Africa like that. That's true. Larsalis, they got a lot of teachers as a consequence. They're looking for something better. Ironic that the lingua franca is English and not French. Where? In the United States? Or you mean the world? At one time, variable vision, the lingua franca was of the world French. And for a long time it was French, for a few centuries. That's because France was the most powerful nation in Europe, and it became the language of diplomacy. And also English elites and elites in all the countries in Europe would learn French because it was the universal language where you spoke in the court. And when you traveled, if you went to Moscow to visit St. Petersburg, you were likely to be speaking French to a German who was also visiting there, because you probably don't speak Russian, they may not speak it very well, and you both speak French very well because that was the language. And French as a language, as a second language for Europeans and the Western world was the norm even when I was in high school. Most people took French. And so, yeah, even though there's more Spanish speakers, they took French. But French has been eclipsed by English in diplomacy now, and so it's kind of fallen back. Carlos says, how do you think South Africa can fix the metro system? Get rid of Transnet. Many things to us. As someone who comes from rural area, I will tell you that before 94, we didn't have access to electricity and water and had to walk long miles to crocodile-infested rivers to wash clothes. Yeah, well, it wasn't that. I can show you that in 2000, under the ANC, kids in KwaZulu-Natal were still walking 8 or 10 kilometers to attend a primary school with no electricity. I was there. You want to see a photo of it? I'll find that photo and show you all these kids on the road on my way to Rorke's Drift. Or I'm sorry, Isan Lawana. From Rorke's Drift, Isan Lawana. Kids walking back forever to get home. They got school uniforms, but they didn't have proper schools. And that was under the ANC. Now, early in the ANC's tenure, but it's only gotten worse since then. It hasn't improved. Meanwhile, the ANC has pilfered billions of dollars from the arms deal. Why did South Africa need to buy Type 209 diesel submarines, ladies and gentlemen? Can somebody give me a legitimate reason? Not sarcasm, a legitimate reason why they needed that. Are they using those submarines to protect their shores? No, they're sitting in a harbor because they can't even man them properly. Type 209 diesel submarines. And there are almost no submariners left in the South African Navy by the time that apartheid ended, because the Daphne-class submarines that the South African Navy had were defunct and mothballed, so they weren't using them anymore. So there were very few people with any skills. And of course, they use racial quotas for training submarine crews, which cause all kinds of problems with not getting enough qualified people. Why did they buy Gripen fighters? Who threatened South Africa's airspace? And why couldn't the existing aircraft that had the Mirages do the job? Why did they buy corvettes from a German firm? 3 corvettes. To do what? To prevent the Chinese from illegal fishing off the coast? No, they're not doing that. They're also sitting in harbor, rarely going to sea. Why did they buy Hawk lead-in fighter trainers from the Brits? I shall go on, yes. $7.1 billion in the end. It was supposed to be $4.6 billion, and it became $7.1 billion. Not rand, dollars, ladies and gentlemen. And lots of that money was pilfered. And money that wasn't directly in the deal. There was back channel money from Thales, the French defense company, given to ANC politicians like Jacob Zuma, through Sheikh Shabir, and many others. Why weren't they fixing schools? Why did they sell the strategic reserve of oil to a BEE company at below market prices and rob the country of its strategic oil reserve a few years ago? Why did that happen? Talk about corruption. That money, if we're going to sell the strategic oil reserve, could have been used to fund schools. Why is South Africa sending peacekeepers to the DRC, to Burundi, to Ethiopia, to Cote d'Ivoire, endlessly, the Central African Republic, spending money there instead of fixing schools? Why did Jacob Zuma have 63 departments and ministries, all with their own staffs, creating fictitious departments out of thin air instead of funding schools? I ask you. I could go on. Travelgate. ANC politicians spending ludicrous amounts of money to travel first class abroad and domestically. That's shameful. We only travel second class in the U.S. government. Second class. There's only a few exceptions to that. Very few. And it's not in the Department of Defense, trust me. Yeah, so there you go. The money has been there. The amount of money the ANC has stolen from South Africa and from South Africans would have improved education if the ANC had not been race-based discrimination against white teachers, English and Afrikaans teachers who were qualified. And instead, do what I suggested in 1994. Have patience. You must have strategic patience. And this is what I said in 94 and I say it to this day. Here's the problem. You have two generations of ANC cadre who are basically functionally illiterate, who can't reason. Why? Because they protested by not going to school when Afrikaans was thrown out in 76 and thrown out there in 85 once again. You have two generations of kids who refused to go to school, and many of them left the country and went to the bush. Some went abroad and got educated, but most didn't. So when apartheid ended, if you're going to give those cadres positions of responsibility in the government or the infrastructure or the bureaucracy, they're largely unqualified for it. And if you displace qualified people, you get chaos. Transnet, Eskom, not so much Denel, but the list goes on and on. SAA, the list goes on and on. So this is what happens. You must have patience. It would take, I said in 94, at least 20 to 25 years for South Africa to fix its school system so that everyone gets a fair shot and allow people to become educated so they can enter the workforce, because those two generations of ANC cadre are wasted. They're of no economic value by and large other than labor, and they're not going to settle for labor because it's our turn to eat. And instead of having strategic vision and patience and showing continuous progress, the ANC has played games and played race-baiting games the last 10 years, but they played games for 20 years. And this is why South Africa is in the crapper. That's why it's in the crapper. Instead of encouraging South Africans to work with each other, they race bait people. And that's what's going on, ladies and gentlemen. And it's not only sad, pathetic, it's reprehensible. It's reprehensible what has happened. And guess what? Thank you. It's come to our shores. We have it here now too. This nonsense going on with race baiting. Of course, it's been going on for a long time, but now it's reached epic proportions like you have in South Africa. Hashtag science must fall. Are you serious? What a bunch of morons. What a bunch of idiots. Roads must fall. You do realize that that universe exists because the dude gave the money. I don't care how he got the money. Alfred Nobel, the Nobel Prize named after him. He invented dynamite. Talk about killing people. Anyway, he didn't kill him, but he created the mechanism that made it easier. Erica's here. Good to see you, Erica. Carlo, how do you think South Africa can fix the metro system? I think I just did that. New visitors to the channel, please like and subscribe. Thanks, Lynn. Rolf, Viking Boar, first heart transplant done by Afrikaans guy, Christian Barnard, that's true. That was a long time ago, 1960s. Ryan's, come on. Ryan's science snippets. Gosh bless it. What's going on here? It keeps jumping on me. Submarines are for chasing these sharks. Ah, okay. So it's a Super Rugby thing, Robert. You must close the hatches before you Heinrich, somebody was listening to my story about that. Yes, you must close the hatches before you submerge the submarine. Ask the German technicians who shook their head. They couldn't believe that. They could not believe that. Okay. And then I stayed in the hostel because it was too far to walk. And Sasa says, I walked 10 kilometers to school 30 years ago. We shouldn't have moved a bit away from that in all this time. Yeah, you would think. Ryan's science snippets, Northern KZ and community calls themselves forgotten. They are convinced the president back then did not know they existed to the lack of service delivery. Viking Boar was in the Navy. We had the most seaward defense boats, more than many other big countries. William Both, I worked for ThyssenKrupp on the submarines when they were here to refurbish S-101. Lots of stories I'd rather speak about offline. I can email you. Willem, yes, you can email me. Absolutely. I'd be happy to hear about it. But I do know some of the stories. I know about the sea trials. And for the first submarine, the South African crew was handed the keys to the submarine, and the German technicians went along. And so they left port, they went out, and they submerged without closing the hatch. They took on tons of seawater and did millions of dollars of damage to the submarine. The German technicians just shaking their head like this. Yep. Anyway, but yeah, send me an email. I'd love to hear what you got to say about that. I know all about it. Well, not all about it, but I'm probably going to learn a lot from you. Yeah, Robin says, came in easy, but elevate after a while. New strategy for them. Nope, not a new strategy, Robin. We just were far too patient. I was leaving it up to my moderators, and I did give a warning a couple of times. Okay, all that money lost should have been used for hospitals, education, infrastructure, housing, and property. Exactly right. Pensions or the unemployment insurance fund. Where's that money at? Andre, it does not help building schools and libraries when the kids burn them down. You got that right. And this is another problem with South Africa and with the ANC, but South Africa in particular. And it's this culture of disobedience and lack of respect for authority and lack of respect for civil order, which was encouraged under apartheid because it was the only mechanism to fight back. They were powerless and weak. So the only way to fight back, they being the people who were angry with apartheid, the only way to fight back was civil disobedience and throwing rocks and burning things. And it just carried on. And the ANC used it as a weapon of war for the People's War in KwaZulu-Natal. Just carried it on right up through the election in 1994. And so it's a time-tested tradition for leftists to cause this problem. And it just continues to this day. It just continues to this day. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel. And today we're just talking about South Africa in particular. Also talking about etymology of names, my surname, the English language, things like that. And I'll be on again later tonight. I'll be streaming the Republican National Convention. And tonight the headliner is Vice President Mike Pence. We also have a number of other speakers this evening, which should be quite interesting. So I'll be covering that. I'll have the speakers up there when they're transitioning between speakers. I'll be offering commentary. I can't do it all the time. The difference between commenting when Ramaphosa or one of the ANC cadres are talking is that most of them English is not a first language, and so they pause, long pregnant pauses, which gives me a great opportunity to make commentary, which Ronaldo also does when he does that, and Roman as well. With the Americans, it's their first language, and they don't pause long enough for me to get in. So usually what I'll do is I'll bring myself on a screen so you know I'm there, and I might make some facial gestures or put up a sign in the midst of a speech, and occasionally I might jump in. But mostly when a speaker's talking, if it's a speaker that's not particularly interesting, from my perspective, I'll just leave them up on the screen in mute, and then I'll bring them in, and I'll go quiet, that sort of thing. But anyway, that's tonight. Very early for people in South Africa. It'll be probably 3 a.m. when I do that, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for the Republican National Convention. Going to go live and cover it. See if we get more people than we got last night. We had a nice small crowd last night. Big surprise. People didn't know I was going to do that. Rolf says the rest of the world should thank the ANC for wasting the taxpayers' money and buying things from the rest of the world. Lynn says my granddaughter's starting next year. Teaching or going to school? I think she's going to school next year. SA lost trillions of rands over the past 26 years. That's true. New prefect. No, Lynn has been a mob before under a different name. The roads must fall. BLM movement seemed to be associated with Obama politics. After the success here, it was only natural they would try it in America. True. Lezan says, the 65-year-old Kosa lady that we were giving a week-long retirement farewell to, who was well-educated, disagrees with you, says if you were willing to learn, there was always opportunity. Variable Vision says, Democrats have cozy relations with ANC through the likes of Oprah and Patrice Motsepe. No wonder our nonsense found its way to your shores. Yeah, true. Anna Marie Forster says, SA is not in the crapper. It's further back than that. It's the long drip. Thank you for that. Willem Bota will do. Thank you for the email. Okay, Variable Vision. I heard a sewage plant was renamed in honor of John Oliver. Didn't hear that. Okay, Lynn says, thank you. You're most welcome. Yeah. And Bongani, you're talking to Andre. Very conservative process. We must be talking about Venda country up there north, close to the Limpopo. That must be what we're talking about. I think that many sings to us is our friend the Venda. Anyway, so yeah, interesting stuff, is it not, folks? Let me see. So earlier I talked on the stream about, come on, that's not it. That's not what I want. I talked earlier on the stream about genealogy, and also talked about my trip out to Wyoming that's coming up. So I think that's interesting. But yeah, let me talk about this, because I've actually been there, and we're still waiting to hear this. This is rather sad to hear about, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you probably heard about this. This is from a couple of days ago. But let me just cover it. Al Jazeera covered this, of course. I'm not surprised it did, and I have no objection to it. I'm glad they covered it. But here you go. Massive fire engulfs historic Durban Mosque. Huge fire breaks out in 139-year-old Gray Street Mosque in the southeastern port city of Durban. Massive blazes engulfed the 139-year-old mosque in the South African city of Durban. It caused the fire on Monday at the Grey Street Mosque, one of the largest in the Southern Hemisphere. It was the largest in the Southern Hemisphere for a long time, but is not immediately known. Faisal Suleiman, chairman of South African Muslim Network, said it was believed to have started in one of 7 staff flats located above the mosque and may have been caused by an electrical fault. It's presumed to be accidental and not to have been any foul play, Suleiman said. Yep. Anyway, so yeah, really sad to see that historic mosque catch fire, but that did happen this week. Massive damage. I'm not sure what took so long for a response to get there. I saw several videos which people put out there on it. Let me see if I can bring one of them up. Hendo said he saw that. Yeah, it's really sad. It's a fascinating mosque, very interesting. Let me see if I can find this really quickly, guys. And Grey Street. I'll put Grey Street on here. Most of these are really short videos, but I got these. Oh, that says Gary Street, not Grey Street. Grey Street. Okay, let me see if I can find the video here on my drive. Downloads. Here we go. There it is. Oh, here we go. Whoop, that's crooked. What's going on there? Sorry about that, folks. I don't know why it's sideways. Wow, that's total loss there. Whew. I can't change that. I can't change orientation, so I'll apologize ahead of time. Wow, that's pretty crazy. Yikes. Okay, that's crazy. Let me try to get another one here. Let me see if it comes up better than that. That's that one. Okay. Anybody been there myself a few times? Yeah, predated the Anglo-Boer War. Yeah, that thing is 139 years old. It was been there for a long, long time. Of course, when Indians were first brought to South Africa. Some of us live under a rock, says Rolf. It is cowboy country. That's right. The University of Wyoming is known as the Cowboys. Yep. Sorry, Chris. I'll be over and out at that time, Erica. Yeah, well, Erica, I think most people will be over and out, but we actually had folks from South Africa tuning in. Robin wasn't there. She has odd hours. I think she didn't know about it. FPB, that's the Durban skyline I know. Sideways, yep. No, I can't rotate it. I have to set it up that way. I can't do it midstream here in my Streamlabs OBS. But anyway, yeah, that's really sad, ladies and gentlemen, to see what happened with that. Unfortunate, the mosque is burned. It's a loss for South Africa. It's a shame. Paulie says that's a fire and a half. Crews got there, had a job and a half. God bless the Durban Fire Department. Yeah, I don't know how quickly it got there, but look, Paulie, you could speak to this better than anyone else because you're a firefighter. I've got some. What's a volunteer firefighter experience, but not much. And fire, it can go fast. It can go fast. The conditions in that building with those arches, letting air get in there and let the fire get the oxygen, those huge arches, probably contributed to that blaze going up very fast. Paulie, if I'm off base, you let me know. You correct me. I'll be happy to be corrected, but I'm just talking about this from that standpoint. That was a challenge for the Durban Fire Department to do. I don't know how long it took them to get there, but it doesn't take long. That could have been within a couple of minutes. That could have been that blaze from nothing to that in just a couple of minutes. Yeah, Paula, you would know. Did you talk to anybody who responded to the fire? Do you know any Durban firemen? Let us know. Paulie is a first responder, a firefighter, in case you didn't know that. Okay, how many times have you visited South Africa? Ronell, I think about 450 times I've been to South Africa. Something like that. Quite a few. Yep. In seconds. Yep. Sad situation, says Lynn, still awake, dealing with the horses with side effects from vaccines. Ooh. Yeah, malaria is still an issue towards Guyana district, dangerous, but now the disease has been wiped out by people. Certain places were historically ill-populated due to the disease. Please help me and Andre convince people that South Africa only went further down the long drop since 1994. Another iconic building burnt down. So sad, says Erica. I agree. The mosque is okay. The accommodation above that was damaged. Really, Greg? Really? Okay. Well, that's fascinating to hear. I mean, I haven't seen more news reports about it, so it'll be interesting to know. But still, it's horrific. I hope nobody was lost. I didn't hear anything about casualties. Yeah, so it's really, really sad. That is an iconic building. Let me back on the screen, folks, so you guys can see it. If you've never seen the Grey Street Mosque, if you're not familiar with it, and just because you're from South Africa doesn't mean you'd know it, because not everybody in South Africa is familiar with it. But here we go. Come on. This is the Grey Street Mosque. Look at that. Beautiful building, beautiful minarets there, quite lovely. And it stands out, it jumps, it gets your attention when you're down there. And I know exactly where this corner is. Just down to the side of that is where the market is. And it's a famous market. Boy, you want to get some good smells, walk in that marketplace. Wow. and you'll get curries and all these different smells from the spices and everything. It's quite amazing. Yeah, this is a must-see if you're in Durban. So, okay, if the mosque survived, that's great. Yeah, but it's still really sad to see a fire like that because people could be hurt by that. Andre says, I think we will see much more landmarks that burn down in the near future. Yeah, I hope not. Bongani, the problem now is educators are not equipped or skilled to educate the learners today. Yes, that's the case with a lot of educators, Robert. That is true. And we're not even talking about political narratives that are being pushed. That's a problem too. We have that here in the U.S. where people push political narratives and indoctrinate instead of educate. So we're not even talking about indoctrination. We're just talking about qualification. So California famously had this asinine plan in which they decided that they were going to require all children to be educated in California public schools in the language, the mother tongue of themselves if they're immigrants or of their first generation immigrant parents. So let me explain. So you got a kid born in South Korea. Parents come here, 6, 7 years old, go to school. The state of California demanded that all of these kids be taught in Korean. Okay? But California has dozens of languages. And so what happens? Tagalog, Farsi, Arabic, Mandarin, Korean, take your pick. All of these languages are in California. So you get a situation in a public school where the school is obliged to teach these children in the language that they learn abroad, or even if they were born in America and their parents speak Tagalog or what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying Vietnamese. There you go. Vietnamese will work. Then the school is still going to teach that child, a child born in America, an American citizen under our laws, going to teach them in public schools in Vietnamese. Now, how many businesses in America run on Vietnamese? Be almost zero, right? Almost zero. So what happened is they did this for a long time. They wound up having American-born children attend public schools in California, paid for by California taxpayers in a country that speaks English, graduating from high school and barely functional because they took English as a second language. Nico Ross has become a member. Nico, you get a render a hand salute for that. Thank you, Nico, for becoming a member. That's awesome. So you get these kids who are Americans, graduate, they can barely function in English. Meanwhile, Nigerians, kids who go to private school in Nigeria, are more proficient and fluent in English, which is not their native language, than American-born children. California finally abandoned this idiotic leftist socialist nonsense. Ooh, it's discriminatory to make people learn English. No, it's not. It's functional. It's useful since it's our damn language. See, the problem is this. The leftists think that the role of government is to do everything for you and me. It's not. The role of government is to ensure a level playing field so that people have opportunity and they're not discriminated against in the public space. They get a fair chance. Everybody gets a fair chance. That's the role of government. It's not there to do for you. That's lazy. Why would you want someone to do for you and to control your life and decide what you get and what you don't get and when you get it and when you don't get it? Are you that lazy? A lot of people are. That's not the role of government. So, for instance, it's not the role of government to ensure the survival of Welsh in Wales. It's not. It's not the role of government to ensure the survival of Spanish in the United States. It's not. It is sure as hell not the role of the government of the state of Maryland to publish things bilingually in English and Spanish when less than 2% of the state of Maryland spoke Spanish and nearly 4% spoke Russian and Ukrainian at the time that they were having bilingual documents in Spanish and forcing me, an English speaker, to have to say, yes, please English. No, not please English. Screw that. We speak English here. Come on, bring the hatred on. I'm waiting for it. Yeah, oh, you're lazy, you're a bigot, you're old white guy. No. I speak 6 languages. Oh, yeah, they're probably just European romance. No, they're not. I speak 3 languages that are African. Oh. Yeah, so tech. Go away, piss off, foot sec, with your nonsense. I can stand the heat of that argument because I know better. I encourage people to learn a second language. It's a wonderful idea. I think all children should give it a try in primary school, at the end of primary school, and in secondary school. But they shouldn't be forced to do it, especially in a country that has 330 million people where you don't need to speak another language to do anything in this country or to travel most of the world. So why would you bother? Well, because I think it's healthy. It's smart to learn another language, but you shouldn't oblige people to do it. But they think the role of the government is to save Spanish. It's not. It's not the role of the government. That's not the role of the government. If a language is important, then the parents will inculcate the language in their progeny. Their progeny will continue this down a stream of history. And I give you two cases in point here. First case, historic old Spanish families from New Mexico, San Antonio, Southern California, some of whom have been in that region for 4 centuries. And their descendants today, many of them still speak Spanish. They still learn Spanish at home and at church. And they're still Roman Catholics. And they still practice many of the cultural traditions that the Spanish brought to the New World, to Mexico, and those territories which were part of Mexico at one time. But that's a responsibility of those families, not the government of New Mexico or Texas or California. I'll give you another example. The Amish and some Mennonites still speak German as a first language. It's 17th century German, so it's a little dodgy for many of us who speak Hochdeutsch to understand, but we can get by. Their first language is German. They still speak it to this day. Is that because the government made laws or schools for them? No. It was important to those people so they retain the cultural distinctiveness without the intrusion of the state, and they shared it with their progeny. And they showed the value of it, the importance of it. So kids today, born in Amish communities in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, right down the road from here, can still speak German. And if they were put in a time machine with Bill and Ted's excellent, adventure and went back to 1650 to the same area, they'd be able to talk to the Amish who were there then, because their family valued the language and the culture, and they perpetuated it. Not the state. That's not the role of the state. Knock it off, leftists. Yanni's here. Yanni's here. Joe's console must have broken. All right, let me catch back up here. Anna Marie Force, I have no news on Alfred Adrian. I've heard nothing from anybody, and I don't have any news. I'll try to contact him. Sad when historical structures damaged, whether accidentally or through vandalism. Yeah, it is. There's some rare Islamic books. Oh, I hope they were saved, Viking Boar. That's a good point. Yep. Okay, and quite scary how COVID symptoms compare to AHS in horses. We've been dealing with it for hundreds of years. The exact symptoms out of the 4 forms, the lung is the worst. That's a shame. Excuse me. Nico Ross, I already gave you a salute. Paulie says, can't quite work out how it was so advanced. Don't know anyone that was there. Heck of a fuel load, maybe a complete carpeting prayer mat on the floor mosque, possibly construction. Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, you're right. It's. I don't know either, Paulie, and I was just speculating. So it is so sad. Hendo, in America, it's those Marxist communist lecturers and professors in tertiary education has brainwashed susceptible young people to hate America, selling the seeds of, yeah, spot on, BLM, spot on. Hey, swear I'm DJ. Bongani and Guenya. But sitting back and doing nothing was not a solution either. The education system was not ideal. No, it wasn't. It needed to be fixed. And I have a solution. And I had a solution in 1994. And my solution still works. K97, Heuland Chris Hochhanded. Ziemlich gut. Rather good, actually. Thank you. How about yourself? Schwarzenegger. What's that about? The many things HIV infection didn't invade villages. It was an urban disease, just like malaria. It was an urban disease. Not entirely accurate, many things to us. It's not an urban or rural disease. It's all over the place, and it has been all over the place always. Did you see the Zulu film, the first ever Zulu language film, yesterday? It's a fictional narrative, but it's a true story. It's happened to thousands of people like that. So her husband was off in a mining camp and brought it back. Long-distance truck drivers brought the virus back to their villages, rural villages across southern Africa. And people spread it around. So, yeah. So I'm not sure what you meant, but I'm not trying to correct you. I'm just saying that calling it an urban disease, I don't think that's an accurate statement there. What else we got here? Andre says, I speak 4 languages fluently: English, Afrikaans, Mandarin, and Kakpraat. Kom ons praten bikkie kak. Kom ons praten bikkie kak. I can speak sign language. That's my 3rd language. Yeah. By the way, folks, for many years, South African Sign Language, which differs from other sign languages, but South African Sign Language, there was an effort to make it the 12th official language of South Africa. You got 11 official languages. They tried to make it the 12th official. Hendo, are you laughing at my Afrikaans or what I said? Kom ons praten bikkie kak. Anyway. Cockpot is your first language. I'm guessing Antifa's declared terrorists for some time now, Rolf. Yeah, no, it was only when this nonsense started in June that President Trump finally declared the anti-fascist movement to be a domestic terrorist organization. The Obama administration encouraged them to burn cities and murder people. They didn't say that, but their actions encouraged the Antifa, which is ironic because Antifa is short for anti-fascist, and it doesn't come much more fascist than the brown shirt thugs of Antifa, ladies and gentlemen. So there you go. There you go. Anyway, yeah, that's fascinating. By the way, you guys still good with the too much German accent? Yeah, you're right, Swearim DJ. Sorry, had to work on it. Komm ons Blatt and Bicky. How's that? Is that better? You guys still good with the big Chris, the looking large and in charge? Charles in charge right here, rather than the little postage stamp one. Those of you on the mobile part are like, yeah, we actually know what you look like, man. You got blue eyes. Had no idea. Yikes. All right, back to this. You know, bloody latecomer Yanni. Yeah, he and Dodgy Joe, man. They're always up to something. You got to wonder about them. Mara Fori says, hi, Chris. Everybody else, good evening. Mara, are you still looking for your friend? Have you found her? Kom ons praten Bicky Hollands. Okay. Yeah. Who can we blame? We can blame lots of people, but I blame the African National Congress. Their policies intentionally alienated qualified teachers and pushed them out of the education system. Their priorities were not children. Their priorities were pilfering with the arms deal and with all these other things. Why is Zuma building in Kandla when kids are dying in pit latrines? You tell me. You tell me. The ANC has the fingers on the purse strings. They control the purse strings of the entire country. They decide. 26 years. Ladies and gentlemen, 26 years is time for 2 full age cohorts to start kindergarten, pre-K, all the way through 12, graduate, and the next group to go all the way through 12 and graduate, and you got 2 more years. It's 2 full generations of kids. And things are worse today than they were in 1994. Demonstrably worse for everybody. At least under apartheid, if you had money, you got the best education in the world. Some of the absolute best private schools on the planet are in South Africa and were. And even public schools, some of the best public schools are in South Africa. But the money was allocated disproportionately to white communities. And that's just a fact. You can't deny it, folks. It's truth. But instead of keeping schools that were funded properly and had proper instruction and educational standards, instead of maintaining that and uplifting the rest, they took from that to screw those groups over and lowered everybody's expectations. And that's soft bigotry. And it's really sad. It's a shame. It's a shame. It's a shame. It's an absolute shame. And the ANC should be called on the carpet for that. Big Chris is good, especially in high definition. Cool. Rolf says, will people look back at USA and see Antifa on the same light as now see ANC, MK apartheid? People already see it in that light, but the people who control our media and the political Nancy Pelosi, ladies and gentlemen, Nancy Pelosi, right? Okay, Nancy Pelosi had the audacity to open her yap this week and call Republicans treasonous, traitors to America and to the Constitution. I'm a registered Republican. She can go shove it up her bomb. Treasonous? I don't recall ever seeing her in combat. I don't recall ever seeing her support and defend the Constitution. All I ever see her do is undermine it. And calling me a traitor? Treasonous? That's inflammatory language. But that's the Democrats. Everybody's a Republican is treasonous. What a bunch of idiotic morons. The fact that people in California are moronic enough to vote for this woman repeatedly to be in Congress, they all ought to be sanctioned for their stupidity. She's a boil on Congress. Ooh, I guess that'll keep me from running for Congress now. A boil on Congress. Sad, sad, sad. I would think that most Democrats, I would hope, are embarrassed. Swearim DJ is trying to throw me some strange German here. Kommen wir sprechen ein bisschen Deutsch. Kommen wir sprechen ein bisschen Deutsch. Paulie says, sorry if I missed out. Have you discussed the widespread news regarding Parliament forging ahead with nationalizing the SA Reserve Bank? Here comes hyperinflation. No, I did not talk about that, Paulie. That's been a boiling issue for a while. Was there something that came out today in the news? If there was, I didn't see it because I was busy taking care of a package for South Africa today, which ate up a bunch of my morning. Then I did my show, and then I had to run over and collect mail in Carlisle and also get these awesome coins, which I'm giving to the volunteers out there on this outdoor adventure we're doing for war veterans, or for veterans. U.S. Army War College coin. This is from the class of 2020. And this is interesting and noteworthy because the class of 2020 is what I call the Corona class. This is the War College class that was suspended, and they did this by distance on the fly, learning how to do this overnight to graduate from the Army War College this year. So, yeah, this is a unique one. That's a commander's coin or a challenge coin. So I went to pick these up, purchase these so we could give these as gifts to those who volunteer their time out there in Wyoming when we go on this outing coming up in early September. So there you go. Yeah. So I haven't talked about that, but thanks for sharing that, Paulie. I appreciate that. If there was something in the news, I didn't see it. I'm also focused on the Republican National Convention today. So, by the way, folks, you're listening to Chris White Africa on the Indaba Africa channel. Today I'm wearing a Rugby United t-shirt. There you go. Just came in the mail just before I sat down, and it was complimented earlier by my cap from Rugby United New York, which I've had for a while. Check it out. Rugby United New York. There you go. Put it back on for a few minutes, even though I keep messing with the hat. Yeah, so that's the jersey I'm wearing today, folks. And it looks like the hat's a little bit darker than the shirt. Maybe it's the lighting. Anyway, so yeah, so that's the jersey. I will be doing a stream tonight, very late for those in Africa. But here in the U.S., it'll still be a reasonable time. I plan on going on around just before 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to cover the Republican National Convention on day 3. The keynote speaker tonight is Vice President Mike Pence. I'm looking forward to that. Talk about an honorable man. He's an honorable man. And he was just called a traitor by Nancy Pelosi. Tuck, tuck. Go away. Go away. Tuck. Anyway. Right, back to the chat. So you didn't miss out. Lead story on IOL as well as a few others. Okay, thanks. Check it out if you can. I will. Looks like these clowns are gathering momentum. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Ronell says, those are nice. Cool. Rolf says, why is U.S. Army so involved in other countries? Interesting question, but what do you mean so involved? You'll have to clarify. I don't think the U.S. Army's so involved anywhere except Afghanistan, the Philippines, and Germany, and places where you have troops stationed, just a handful of places. So involved. Involved? Yeah, sure. We're involved in South Africa. We work with the South African Defense Force, National Defense Force. We work with the Botswana Defense Force, the Namibian Defense Force, Swaziland, the Mbuftu Royal Swazi Defense Force. That's their defense force there, the Lesotho Defense Force. We used to work with Zimbabwe Defense Forces until they abandoned the rule of law and persecuted their own citizens, blaming it on race as they went after white Zimbabweans. And then as they ramped it up and killed black Zimbabweans, they couldn't blame it on race anymore. But they got away with it. They're willing accomplices in the media. Yeah, so we work with lots of militaries. But when you say so involved, you have to give me an impression of what you're talking about, because for me, that's a relative term. I spent much of the last 20 years in countries all over Africa. I was stationed in Tunisia, Liberia, Botswana, Malawi, Niger, Mauritania, Uganda, and Ethiopia. But in almost all those countries, most people had no idea I was ever there. Except, well, Liberia, I was definitely known because everybody knew me. I was a mini celebrity in Liberia because of the rebuilding of the armed forces of Liberia. But my impact on people there, it was impressive, or not impressive, but big. But it wasn't something they were directly aware of, improving their quality. All the above you mentioned, those countries. Well, we're not the only ones. You go to Zambia, where I was working in Zambia. The South African National Defense Force has an attaché there. They do things with the Zambians. The Zimbabwe Defense Force sent their pilots to South Africa to train black South African pilots because they were unhappy that 70+% of them were failing under the program. What they neglected to tell anybody is that over 70% of white pilot candidates, Indians and coloreds, were also failing. It wasn't a racist thing, but that's how they portrayed it. But Zimbabwe worked with them. Defense cooperation is a normal sort of thing between peaceful countries around the world. You do integrate and operate and do exercises and share best practices with militaries around the world. It's an everyday situation. The countries I just talked about, the only one of those countries where there were combat troops deployed during my time in those countries was Uganda. And that was because special forces were there as part of a support package to help the African Union Regional Task Force to hunt down Joseph Kony in the jungles of the Central African Republic on the eastern side. That's it. No other place where I was at had combat troops on a combat mission in those countries, ever. So there you go. Yeah, we're not so involved. I disagree with that term, and that's important to say. But thank you for the question, Rolf. Okay. Nico says, where does your interest in coverage on and about South Africa stem from? Honest question. I know you have a lot of experience in and around South Africa. What motivates you? Well, I've told that story before, Nico, but I'll share it again here very quickly. So I read a book in high school. Now, I already had some interest in Southern Africa because I was following the liberation movements in Rhodesia, in Mozambique, in Angola, and also in Southwest Africa. I was following those events in the late 1970s when I was in junior high school and in high school. And I read a book by James Michener, who is a famous American historical novelist. He takes real events, real places, real characters, and interweaves fictional characters into the story who become the main focus. The historical figures are just there to interact, but the focus isn't historical figures. So the real focus is fictional characters he creates, and he weaves the story. So his book, The Covenant, was about South Africa. I got a copy, I had a paperback copy. I read it from cover to cover. I was enthralled by it. I read it 2 or 3 times back then. I still have that book somewhere in the basement. It's paperback. The spine is all curled up now because it's 40 years old. But fell in love with it and became my favorite author overnight. I used to like Steinbeck, but then I became a major fan of James Michener. I read so many of his books. I read The Covenant. After I read The Covenant, Chesapeake, Space, Poland, Texas. The list goes on and on and on. I never read Hawaii. That was his most famous one early on. But The Covenant. And I fell in love with South Africa and I had interest in that. So that's where it kind of grew from there. When I went to university, I studied Western civilization as a history student. After a year, I left university, went in the Army. Followed events in Africa from Europe when I was in the Army. 1985, we had We Are the World. We are the world. We are the children. Make a better day when we start giving. Anyway, remember that We Are the World? Raising funds for starving Ethiopians. So I remember that. And my attention was there. I read a book by Timberlake, a guy named Timberlake, talking about Africa and famines and hunger and things like that. I'm like, wow. So when I went back to university in Ohio in 1987 to study history, and I focused on Africa. That was my focus. And my key focus was Southern Africa. And went from there. I'd already started learning Afrikaans in 1985, started self-teaching myself Afrikaans, and then picked up the pace a bit in 89 so I could understand it, read it. I don't claim to speak it, but I do understand it. And that's kind of where it grew from. And I decided I wanted to be a regular Army officer, military intelligence, and then later, at the point in your career when you do it once you become a major, be a regional specialist for sub-Saharan Africa. Almost nobody in the Army ever says, I'd like to be a regional specialist for sub-Saharan Africa. They're all like, I'd like to be a regional specialist for Western Europe or Latin America or maybe Asia, but almost nobody says Africa. It's an unusual thing, but it's been my thing ever since. I've been studying and following Africa arguably since 1980, so that's over 40 years. And I have been getting paid for it by the Army since 1995. Not anymore. I'm retired since October from active duty. But from 1995 until 2019, I got paid to be an Africa specialist and also paid for language proficiency. So I learned my first foreign language was German. I learned German. And then because I learned German and Dutch, which is where Afrikaans comes from originally, is in between, I started learning Afrikaans. And then at university, I learned Swahili. I was fluent in Swahili because I wanted a language for Africa. After Swahili, then later I was stationed in Italy. I learned some Italian. I never claimed to speak it, though, even though I can get by with Italian. I want to listen to it. And then later I learned Setswana. And what else did I learn? Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of how I did it. But that's where the interest in Africa came from, and it's stuck with me ever since. China would disagree with your statement. Which statement is that? Oh, Rolf says, I'm very uninformed on how and why defense forces work together even in peaceful times. Oh, no, I'm not surprised. Most civilians have no idea. Most civilians have absolutely no idea. Michael Jackson. The Covenant was a great book to read. It was, Mara Furry. Fantastic author, says Darlene Rolofsson. Darlene Rolofsson. That looks like a Norwegian name, like the son of Rolf. Darlene Rolofsson. Well, welcome. Yeah, no, it was fantastic. James Mitchell's brilliant author. He had Caravans, which was a great book. So many great books. But he always took one name or a place, location, and the book was named after Poland. It was about Poland. That one's a fascinating one too because Poland's history is really tragic but interesting. Yeah, so James Mitchell was an amazing author, and I read a lot of his books. My two favorite are The Covenant and Chesapeake. And it used to be The Covenant is my favorite, but on a reread, it became The Chesapeake. I'm from the Chesapeake Bay area of Maryland, and reading about that was just amazing. He's amazing. Anyway, he passed away a number of years ago, but he was quite a talented author and was very prolific and wrote a lot of books, of which I was happy to buy many of them. Yeah, so that's where the interest in Africa came from, and that's where it came from. Yep, so, right. What am I missing here in the chat? Oh, back to Rolf's point. Yeah, most civilians have no idea. So, for instance, let me give you an idea of some of the things we do. People were asking about, military or war stories earlier. I'll share you one now. Okay, so here's the deal. Okay. I'm going to assume that you're not trolling. I'm going to answer this question, then I'm going to get back to that question for Rolf. The many sings to us, says, Chris, why do you think America produced the worst serial killers in the world? We haven't. South Africa has serial killers. They have a serial killer right now in the sugarcane fields of KwaZulu-Natal. Are you aware of that? Up there in Venda country? There's a serial killer running around the fields of KwaZulu-Natal right now. What America has produced is the most sensationalized reporting on serial killers and the most investigative identification of them, and popularized it in Hollywood and serials. That's why. There's plenty of serial killers all over the world who pass undetected, never reported, and kill dozens, if not hundreds of people. It happens all the time. But yeah, we've got some pretty notorious ones. The Green River Killer. Yeah, lots of them. Nico says, thanks a lot for your answer. It was really quite inspiring. I hope to get some of those books and any other you might recommend. I respect you and your resolve. Well, thank you, Nico. It's very kind of you. Asableef. Thank you. Thank you. So back to Rolf's point, his question about it. So here's the story. So I was stationed in Liberia where I was the chief of the Office of Security Cooperation. It was Defense Cooperation. They renamed it Security Cooperation because it was more accurate. It wasn't just defense, but we worked with justice and law enforcement. So while I was there, the U.S. Navy decided to have an exercise off the coast of West Africa, and it was called the Africa Partnership Station. They had a 3-ship mission, a logistics supply ship, the USS McHenry, Fort McHenry, and then 2 other ships, the Swift, a fast ship, and then another one. So what they did is they would come to West Africa. They started like Cameroon. They invited countries in West Africa to give ship riders, and ship riders are foreign militaries, naval personnel who come on your ship, and they become an integral part of your crew, including up to like the number 2 in charge, not the commander of the ship, of course. So Cameroon would send some people on. They'd sail to Nigeria. They'd add a few people from Nigeria. They sailed to Ghana. They added a few people from Ghana. They came to Liberia. And we didn't have any Navy personnel, so they didn't add anybody. But they did keep the ships there, and a lot of things happened. So, for instance, Liberia was in the process of rebuilding at this time. So the U.S. Postal Service donated disused old mailboxes. Sounds like a trivial thing. But before that fleet, those ships left Norfolk in Virginia, this postal equipment was delivered by the U.S. government up to Norfolk, loaded on the McHenry, which is a supply ship, and supported this exercise. And the McHenry brought it, plus a bunch of other donated stuff, to West Africa. So they were in Cameroon, Nigeria, Ghana. They get to Liberia. We offload in the Freeport all of the post office boxes, which were the basis for restarting postal services in Liberia. And that's how it got started, by donated U.S. postal equipment delivered by the U.S. Department of Defense. Now, we found out they were coming, and they had Marines on board the ship, as they always do. So the Marines are trained in hand-to-hand combat and survival skills and lots of things that are useful that we wanted to share with the new Armed Force Liberia. So we created training situations, and we took the Liberian soldiers out to these ships, and they got experience at sea. They were taken out by small craft to larger boats, and they got training from the Marines and got tours of the ships to learn about them. In the meantime, they met other Africans who were part of the crew, officers and enlisted from Cameroon and Nigeria and Benin and Ghana, places like that. And that ship went all the way up to Mauritania before the exercise ended and people were repatriated back. Some came and went, some stayed the whole time. Anyway, so we did that. We post office boxes, and then we brought donations of many other things that Americans gave, the military brought over. Also, with them came the CBs. The CBs stands for Construction Battalion, CB, the letter CB. CBs are the Navy's combat engineers. And so when they land in Iwo Jima, they're the ones who repair the landing strips and fix the ports and clear the mines and clear the concertina wire and build things, bunkers and storage facilities. The Seabees can build all kinds of things. They can fix roads. They can dig wells. They can build buildings. So we knew they were coming. So we sat down with the USAID, the U.S. International Development Agency, Agency for International Development, AID, and the embassy, the ambassador's office. And we looked at projects that were viable. And unusually, I had Seabees for 3.5 months. That's unheard of. That was because Liberia was a poster child for post-conflict reconstruction, and they were going to get a lot of attention. So we were given the Seabees. When they came to West Africa, they got to Liberia, they stayed there for the rest of the time, and then a ship came back and picked them up after the exercise. They dropped them on the way to Cameroon, and then went all over, and they came back, and then later picked them up after Mauritania. So we had them in Liberia. So we established programs to do the demonstration school in Monrovia. We went to Logantown and fixed wells and schools and clinics and things like that. And not only that, but what we did with this, in addition to the Seabees fixing things for Liberians, because, teach a man to fish or give a man a fish, I scheduled with my limited resources the advanced individual training for the soldiers designated based on their qualifications to become engineers in the new Army. We waited for their training until just before the Seabees arrived, and we staggered 2 classes so we didn't overwhelm them. The first class graduated from the combat engineering course 2 weeks after the Seabees had come, got established, had all their equipment, their backhoes, their paving equipment, all their stuff, their pioneering tours. Once they were already doing it, they're accustomed to being in Liberia. 2 weeks later, we took the Liberian soldiers who were engineer students, graduated from the course, out, and then they spent the next 3 months with the Seabees on the job training, rebuilding schools, clinics, digging wells, using equipment that we couldn't afford to buy because there wasn't enough resources, but the Navy had it there. It was amazing. And then what did I do? I brought the press out. The press came out, they interviewed soldiers, they did things, and I brought them to a clinic in Logantown, which is near the Freeport in Monrovia. And what we did is I brought the press out there, and they interviewed me. They interviewed the ambassador because we did a ribbon cutting after they finished working on this community center. And they were asking me about it. And he said, so these soldiers, these Americans, what do they think of? I said, well, that's an interesting question, but I think really the interesting question for you is what do Liberians think about their army, that their army is here rebuilding communities for them? And the journalists are like, what are you talking about there, Colonel Wyatt? I said, look around you. You see these soldiers? Of course, we have black soldiers in the military, so they don't pay. They know we have black soldiers. And I said, look at the uniforms. And on their sleeves, they all had the Liberian flag. We had the American flag, but we put it on the right sleeve. In the Army, they put it on the left sleeve. It had the Liberian flag, the Lone Star flag. And I said, those are Liberians. Why don't you talk to them? And they're like, what? So they went and talked to Liberians. So I took it to be a strategic communications opportunity to share with the Liberian public and the neighboring countries what we were doing so that the Armed Forces Liberia were contributing to civil society by rebuilding schools and clinics and community centers. And we did it for almost no money because I had the engineers. So that's interaction with Liberia. That involved U.S. troops. That involved U.S. dollars, but arguably only for the benefit of the Liberian people and also for the qualifications of the Liberian soldiers so they could actually be performing combat engineers. So there you go. That's one example of what U.S. military does in Africa. And by the way, all I was told to do was, get a few projects for the AFL, or not for the AFL, for the combat engineers, the Seabees. So they were coming. Here, take a few projects. But I said that's not enough. We need to think strategically. We need to think about these soldiers getting on-the-job training, which we don't have the resources to provide, and actual experience with people who have years and decades of experience sitting there right with them, right there next to them, helping them out with the proper equipment. And then they'll be well prepared for being combat engineers. Those combat engineers, many of them deployed to Mali later on and did a bang-up job in Mali. So, yeah, that's what we do. That's strategic thinking, ladies and gentlemen. Are you planning to write a book yourself? Viking Boar, I'm already a published author. I have a book from Stellenbosch University that's appearing this month. I'm waiting for the date. It's the 26th already. The hard copy book will be published, sells for $160 a copy. It's an academic book from Stellenbosch University. It'll be available in January 2021. But in the meantime, we're supposed to be getting the electrons, the PDF version of the finished book. I'm waiting for that. So once I have that, if I can make it available, I will. I don't know if I can. But if not, I'll make excerpts available. I have the key chapter in that. I wrote a chapter on the history and the outcomes of the U.S. Africa Command. That's the second book I've been publishing recently. My previous book was one on the building partner capacity in Africa, keys to success. I wrote a chapter in there about the 2017 National Defense Authorization Act and the impact on U.S. security cooperation and potential in Africa. So that one was published by the Army War College Publishing House. Parameters, they did it. And then this one will be published by Stellenbosch University. I'm published in academic papers all over the place in popular press. I've written about defense acquisition in Africa, in African defense publications. One a couple years ago about the Botswana Defense Force and a potential arms acquisition, the impact of that for aircraft and why they're behind even Namibia. And then also I've been published in popular press. I write about rugby, djcoyle.com, their rugby site, which is a really good rugby site. I published 12 articles. They published 12 of my articles from the Rugby World Cup while I was there on holiday. I worked as a journalist. So yeah, I used to write for the Associated Press many, many years ago when I was at university. So yeah, I will write books, but it'll be when I slow down this channel a little bit. Okay. Mara says, I think you should really write a couple books, but your knowledge of Africa and South Africa, at least then people will hear the truth, not make believe. Yeah. South Africa would probably be a good one to write, but I have to think about that one. I need to interview people. So otherwise, it's just an opinion thing, and anybody can do that. See, you actually want to talk to people. Yeah. Okay. I must read that before I die. Thanks a million. You're so generous. Okay. Nico says, may I spend a month with you? Your experience is mind-blowing. Well, if you want to give me a lift around South Africa when I come. Mariana Carmona. Don't you love South African literature as well? One of my top is still Coetzee. Nadine Gordimer, a little bit. English writer Tom Sharp. I don't know English writer Tom Sharp, but I do know I know Johnny Steinberg's writings. I know Coetzee's writings. I know Andre Brink. Andre Brink is a fantastic writer. I'll be honest, I haven't read much about South African novelists of late. It's not been a feature for me, but I used to read Andre Brink. Coetzee I've read as well. Johnny Steinberg stuff, as I said, is good. I've read a lot of South African writings, yeah, and some of it's quite good. I've enjoyed it over the years. But my bigger focus is on Afrikaans music, folks. Love Afrikaans music. It's awesome. And I'm talking about across the board, whether we're talking about, die mooiste zee is die Zuide zee. Die witste Sand ist die Kaapse Sand. Or if it's Snotkop. Doesn't matter for me. Or it could be Steve Hofmeyer and the boys. Die Land behoort aan jou. Ek beloof jou. Die Land behoort aan jou. That's right, die Land. Yeah, take your pick. Or Bok van Black. Sing, Afrikaner, sing. Yeah, no, I love Afrikaans music of all genres. It's cool stuff. But I listen to German music. I listen to French music. French less so, but French Canadian. You blow my mind away, says Viking Born. Nico says, I'm wearing a Russian uniform. I have a few stories. When your enemy became your friend, it's like teams swapping rugby jerseys after a match. Yeah, I got you on that one. My suggestion is F.A. Venta. Okay, says Rolf. All right, cool. But that takes time, folks. Right now, I'm reading a lot of political books. The ones I'm reading are from what's his name? Drawing a blank right now. Is it Cohen? The guy used to write for Breitbart, not Cohen. Drawing a blank right now. But anyway, yeah, I'm reading that. Plus, I'm also reading The United States of Socialism by Dinesh D'Souza. That's interesting. Oh, by the way, folks, I didn't get a commitment, but I think I've got another commitment. I can't confirm. Earlier today, I got a phone call from the office of State Representative Dawn Kiefer, whom I've asked to come to my channel. She's a conservative Republican candidate for state legislature here in Pennsylvania, and I've asked her to come on my channel. And so I got a call that she's out of town. She'll be back next week. I think she's out of town because she's probably doing something with the Republican National Convention, would be my guess. But Dawn Kiefer will be talking to me next week, and hopefully, fingers crossed, she'll be on my channel. Also, as I mentioned, I reached out to other candidates as well as political commentators. I will have on the channel on the 17th of September a major get, Dr. Victor Davis Hanson. Yes, Dr. Victor Davis Hanson. And tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, on Thursday at 12:30, slightly off time, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, U.S. congressional candidate Dasha Pruitt, who was a Russian immigrant to the United States, came here at the age of 10, lived under communism and hates it, and hates what's happening in America with these nonsensical things happening. She is running for Congress for Pennsylvania's 5th District, which is south of Philadelphia, the Chester area of southeastern Pennsylvania. She'll be my guest tomorrow. So if you're curious about American politics and you're curious about immigrants to America and what can happen, this woman could become a U.S. congressman. And we've seen Ilhan Omar come from Somalia on a fraudulent, asylum thing and become a congressperson. So yeah, so you see Dasha tomorrow, and I don't know what her chances are because she's running against an incumbent, but she's a challenger. She'll be on the channel tomorrow. On Friday on Chris White Africa, folks, we have Hein Marks from ULA, United Liberty Alliance. This is the separatist movement in Western Cape, and this will be the third in a series from different organizations. My first one was Phil Craig from the Cape Independence Advocacy Group back in May. And then last week I had on the channel, I had Des Palm from Cape Exit. And now we'll have Hein Marks, and that's on Friday. By the way, if you want to come on the channel and start some stuff, well, what's the beef between this? I'm not going to entertain that. This is not to talk about Cape Exit or other groups. It's to talk about ULA and who they are and what they're all about. So you get a chance to ask questions about that on Friday. Bring your super chats. On Saturday, ladies and gentlemen, Chris White Africa, Dr. Corne Mulder will be my guest. Please tune in for that. The longest serving parliamentarian in South Africa's parliament, been in parliament since before the new dispensation, back under the National Party. He was a representative for the Freedom Front, which later became the Freedom Front Plus. I believe he's number 2 in the party. He's the whip, the chief whip for the Freedom Front Plus in parliament. So it's Dr. Corne Mulder on Saturday. On Sunday, ladies and gentlemen, Andre Snyman, Springbok number 636 and rugby coach based in the UK now. Andre Snyman, 38 caps to his credit as a Springbok, will be right here on Chris White Africa on Sunday. Looking forward to that, noon Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. in London, 6 p.m. in South Africa and Botswana. So there you go. Let me say. People underestimate. He's knowledgeable and it's credible. I have respect to him. Don't let the beard fool you. What's your news source in general, and particularly South Africa? Well, the deal is, Rolf, I read the news sources, but the news sources in South Africa become less and less reliable as they become more and more political. But I do read News 24, I read Mail and Guardian, I read The Independent Online, I read the Financial Times, I read all kinds of stuff. Plus, I read other things that are outside of South Africa, like the Africa Report from Jeune Afrique. I read Business Africa, and the New African, which is a leftist rag made by the same company that writes Business Africa or Africa Business. They're the same company. The African Business is the best business magazine you can find. It's balanced, it's objective, and it's capital-oriented, whereas the New African is a leftist rag, which, talks all this endless neo-colonial nonsense and just can't move beyond it. But I read it because you need to read what your opponent has to say. If you don't read what your opponent has to say, they don't know where they're coming from or, where they're going to. So it's always good to know I don't want to say the enemy, but your opponent. And many, many other things. I read websites. I listen to broadcasts. I watch videos. I do turn to Twitter to get quick feeds like those sideways videos of the mosque burning. I'll get it from there. But I'm circumspect when it comes to using information from Twitter or other online sources like that, social media, because garbage in, garbage out. So usually I'm very circumspect and careful about what I use there. If I'm using it for entertainment purposes, that's fine. But if it's news, I make it clear. And then I take all that information and then I digest it and I read it, I evaluate, I make notes on it, I make assessment, and I make an analysis and oftentimes a recommendation, and I go from there. So I knew nothing about the macadamia nut industry a couple weeks ago, but I watched a program about Australia and they mentioned macadamia nuts, and I said, doesn't South Africa produce macadamia nuts? I think they do. And so I looked into it and come to find out South Africa is the world's largest producer and exporter of macadamia nuts. So South Africa is number 1. In something other than HIV infections and confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Africa, or corruption or violent crime. So they're number 1 in macadamia nut production and export. And so because of my background, my experience as an analyst and how I look at things holistically, I like to think I usually ask the questions that most people don't think about, but they want to know. So for instance, how many people, be honest, would have thought, okay, South Africa is the world's largest exporter of macadamia nuts? But that begs the question. How many people in South Africa actually eat macadamia nuts? What's the size of the market? Because if you are overly dependent on exports, then you are subject to commodity prices. You're always subject to that, but you're also subject to the whims of the marketplace. So right now, when coronavirus hit, people stopped buying luxuries. They stopped buying bananas and pineapples and things like that they didn't need. They bought the things they had to have that they could afford. So my first question after looking at this was, okay, so how much since they're the largest exporter, how much do they have? How much do they produce? So on average now they're producing 50 to 60,000 tons of macadamia nuts per year in South Africa. And where is it produced? 3 main provinces, Limpopo, KZN, and anyway, so 3 provinces. And why is it produced there? And so these are questions people might want to know without even realizing they want to know the answers to these questions. So the next question, back to the original, was that, okay, the export market, it turns out 98% of the macadamia nuts in South Africa are exported. So that means that South Africans don't like macadamia nuts, right? No, some South Africans love them, but only 2%. What does that mean? Well, that means that there is a great market potential for domestic consumption, which would balance things out, which leads to the next question. So let's look at other large macadamia nut producers like Australia, which until recently was the world's largest producer. How much of macadamia nut crop is consumed in Australia? Well, they consume 30%, so 70% is exported. So 30%, that's a lot healthier. That means they're less subject to the vagrancies and the whims of the international marketplace because Australians will eat 1/3 of their crop. Good to go. South Africans eating 2%, you need to up that. So there's a great opportunity for marketing of macadamia nuts and selling of macadamia nuts and in South Africa. But that's the next question. Why is it so small? Well, because the macadamia nut industry is relatively recent in South Africa. It's grown rapidly in the last decade. From the advent of macadamia nuts as a commercial product, that started in Hawaii. The macadamia nut comes from Australia, but it was imported to Hawaii. Saplings were planted, and the first commercial production of macadamia nuts took place in Hawaii. And from the late 19th century all the way up until 1997, the United States was the world's largest producer of macadamia nuts. 1997, Australia, the original home of macadamia nut, surpassed the United States until about 5 years ago when South Africa surpassed them. South Africa is putting more and more nuts out there. So why isn't the domestic market not there? 2 problems. Number one is that there's a lot of theft of macadamia nuts, which undermines domestic producers because people steal the nuts and then they sell them locally, informally. And then the other thing is that the lower quality nuts are kept in South Africa. So a lot of people don't realize the better quality nuts are tastier, and they just see the low quality. And it's like, it's okay, it's not great. So these are the sort of things I bring to it, whether it's the Namibian beef industry, whether it's the economic freedom fighters, whether it's plasmod, whether it's wine industry. I mean, I bring all those things to it. So hopefully that answers your question. And I'm not afraid to report on anything. You want to talk about mining industry? You want to talk about alternative energy? I'm trying to get someone from Sun Exchange on the channel right now to talk about solar installation and monetizing sunshine in South Africa. I've spoken internationally about alternative energy. I've also spoken and given lectures on China and the energy sector in Africa. Take your pick. Some people say jack of all trades, master of none. Well, I disagree. I like to think I'm a master of a few trades. And because of the nature of who I am and what I've done, I can become a master of more than one thing. What is this HIV cure? There's no cure for HIV. What is that nonsense? Okay. Lars Salas says, say O and then say no, but pronounce it no. The O sound English, so yo. Okay. Lars Salas, that was helpful but confusing. I'll have to do that when I'm not trying to do a stream. So we just got over 2 hours, folks. I'm going to call it before too long, but I'm going to get through the chat. I don't want to ignore anybody's chat here because I'm going to have to stream again later tonight. So Mara says, Donald Trump is the only one to win, Chris. Otherwise, we're boiling frogs, happily fried. That's true. When he says, I'll miss out, we're going away tomorrow until Tuesday. Weather's crazy. As for Laura tonight. But you can watch the stream afterwards. There's no cure for HIV. I don't know what you're talking about. And Corne Mulder stream. Thank you for that, Hendo. Marfrey says, News 24 is laughing out loud. It is, but again, Marfrey, you need to read all sorts of things in order to make objective assessments and analysis. So I read all sources of news, that I can get my hands on. Also, I read news in German, in Afrikaans, in English, and French. And my sources come from the French-speaking world, from Germany, from Switzerland, all around the world. And of course, Al Jazeera too. By the way, folks, two news sources that people criticize for being not objective can be objective. So for instance, The Guardian, which is a leftist rag, everything's leftist, hate American, hate UK, hate white people, they hate anything that's not brown, they just tell all kinds of stories. But The Guardian, when they report on rugby, is relatively objective. They pretty much facts. They have very good rugby reporting. So I rely on The Guardian for some of my rugby research. They do a very good job, in my view. When it comes to the Middle East and the United States, Iran, Russia, Al Jazeera is useless. They're obviously very opinionated and biased, and you can't trust half what they write. But when they talk about Africa, they do a relatively objective job of talking about Africa. Pretty much anything, even if it's Islam in Africa, they do a relatively objective job, from my assessment. So that's just a point. That's just about evaluating your sources. So anyway, just thought I'd share that very quickly. Nico says, "Do you know if the University of Pennsylvania still has a folklore and supernatural studies subject?" I do not know if they do. RSG is the best news in South Africa. RSG. What is RSG? I read the Daily Maverick as well, but they've seemed to have become captured now too. The Mail and Guardian was captured several years ago. It's a shame. They were a fantastic newspaper for a long time. News 24 for the leftist liberal propaganda. Rolf, if you don't read what the other people are writing, how do you know what's going on? So nuts are expensive in South Africa. That could be part of the problem, Willem. And that's probably why they leave the poor quality ones there. Macadamia nuts. What's that? Chris, Minister of the Economy. Lars Saul, she's doing an episode on the first people of South Africa. They've been protesting out Pretoria for more than a year. Yeah, I could do an episode on the Khoi and the San. Episode on Khoi and San. Yeah, I could do that. Okay, I wrote a note on that really quickly. Cashew nuts, next video. I love it, but so expensive. Yeah, cashews, well, the ones that kill me, pistachios are my favorite. But pistachios are very expensive, and I mean they're bum painful expensive. Yeah, that one costs a lot. Sun Energy is a good investment proposition, says Darlene Rolofson. Yes and no. The only Teresa Smuts, retract your message. Hi, Teresa. Darlene, the reason that I recommend investing in solar energy in South Africa is not because I'm sold on it. It's still, despite the propaganda, it's still very expensive, and the return on investment is questionable. Maintenance costs are high. Also, it involves a lot of rare earth elements to make these panels and install them properly and to get used. I'm not trying to denigrate the market. It's useful. It's much better than it was 5 years ago, light years better than it was 10 years ago, and it's commercially viable now, which it wasn't 15 or 20 years ago. But the return on energy is far lower than hydrocarbons still to this day, and beyond that, it takes up a lot of space. I know you can put it on the roof, but anyway, there's lots of things there. But the reason I suggest it's viable in South Africa is because Eskom is a disaster. It's a state-owned, parastatal, absolute disaster, which fails South Africans on a minute-by-minute basis, not just a daily basis. So at its best case right now, Eskom can only deliver 60% of its installed electrical generation capacity. That's pathetic. Can you imagine your engine oil running at 60%? So let's say your maximum speed is 100 kilometers. You're only allowed to go 60 because it can't go the other 40 kilometers per hour. Or let's say that you're only allowed to get your 60% of your daily nutritional intake. You're going to wither away to bones pretty quickly by only getting 60% of your energy, lose all that body fat, and suffer immensely. That's Eskom. And because Eskom is a disaster and it's not changing, I'm okay with people investing because it may be more expensive, it may be more difficult, it may put you at the vagaries of sunshine, but at least with solar power, off-grid solar power in South Africa, you have electricity. So tech Eskom. And so that's why I think it's viable in South Africa. I wouldn't recommend it in other places like Germany. It's moronic. It's unreliable. It doesn't produce enough energy in Germany. Viking Boar says, wow, how many hours in your day? It seems like 29. Lars Solis sent you an email with contact details for the group outside Pretoria. Thank you. I thought you were going to give me something on Namibia. Yeah, I do want to do an interview. I'm always trying to find more people. Magnetic energy is clean energy. That's true, Teresa Smuts. Oh, Radio Sondergrenze. Yeah, okay. I never saw the abbreviation before. Gotcha. Okay. Pistache grows in hot climate, low quality soil. There's news circulating a woman may have been cured of HIV. I didn't see that. Magic Johnson famously claims that he's cured of HIV, but he's full of nonsense. I bet you if I go into his spine and pull out the spinal fluid, I can find HIV there because it's where it hides at when it's going. When your CD4 count is high and your viral load is undetectable, it's still in your body. It doesn't go away. So I'm not buying that. I tell you what, anybody wants to sleep her without a condom, good luck to you. Even an old Lister engine pulling a generator is better than Eskom. Yeah. Chris, because Eskom supply electricity to our neighbor countries without compensation. Yeah, but they pull back on that. So Zimbabwe, up to the year 2000, didn't have the money to pay for electricity. So The Cahora Bassa Dam shut off power when they didn't pay the bills. The Kuwaiti pipeline stopped the export of petroleum products from Mozambique into Zimbabwe. And then Eskom stopped providing electricity. And so Zimbabwe was in terrible shape. And that's continued over the years. But by 2008, we already had a problem in Botswana. Botswana pays its bills on time. And South Africa, because of rolling blackouts and then load shedding, started denying part of the grid feed from South Africa to Botswana, which was a problem because Botswana was only at the time producing 25% of its electricity needs from the Molopole plant. Was it Molopole? Anyway, I know where the plant is, but I think I might get the town name wrong. But I've been there. So they're only producing 25% of their own electricity from coal-fired power station. The other 75% was imported from Eskom through the Southern African Power Pool. And Eskom cut power. So when I was in Botswana, I had to go through the jump the hoops nonsense of coming up with funding for all of my employees. I had to come up with $25,000 per employee, Department of Defense, that worked for me. And I had to beg Africa Command for this and for them to get this money from the Department of Defense, which wasn't budgeted for. They had to take it from elsewhere because we didn't have electricity for our service members in their houses. So we need $25,000 to buy industrial generators with a power pad, the heavy cabling, and the switch so that your power doesn't go off, and install all that in all of the residences, which aren't our property. They belong to the landlords, but we installed it and we paid for it so that our service members would have electricity because Eskom is crap. And they started screwing us in Botswana already as early as 2008. So it's not true that Eskom provides power to its neighbors at the expense of South Africa. No. They used to when they were getting money, but then they got so bad they couldn't provide. The reason it was a problem in 2008 is because the rapid growth of the platinum mines in Northwest, from Rustenburg over to just about to Brits. That section, all those mines opening up and consuming so much power, sucked out a lot of power in the grid. They weren't the only mines, but that's the primary contributor at that time why Botswana couldn't get energy, and they screwed us. So I had to spend, over $100,000 buying generators. Outrageous. But thank you, Eskom. So just because I didn't live in South Africa doesn't mean I didn't suffer because of Eskom. Zuma cured HIV by taking a hot shower. Rumor has it. That's what he used to say. Oh, okay. Okay. Many sings to us. This is a story that's been repeated in the past that a bone marrow transplant caused a person to be HIV free. She's not the first person, by the way. That's happened twice previously. There are medical studies about this. Until the studies come out from doctors and clinicians and they categorically say this is possible, I'm not going to. But what they did is they had to irradiate and destroy her entire immune system. She was defenseless, and that's a huge risk to cure her of HIV, something you can get by a broken condom or making a mistake on a drunken evening. So that's a pretty radical step. So I didn't hear about that story. Many sings to us, but there's merit to what you're saying, but I'm not buying that she's cured, so to speak. Larsala says, I'm speaking to my musician friends. 2 of them have been persuaded to start a channel, and one of those has all the equipment. They want to post a few things before doing interviews. Okay, that's fine. Tell them to get busy, man. Mara Fori says, Botswana, a very prosperous part of Africa. Indeed it is. It's fantastic. Larsala, we're trying to see if we can use YouTube as a new stage. People give up their dreams because there's no career for music in Namibia. Yes. No, they don't give up their dreams. They go to South Africa. Rihanna Nell. You've got Juanita Duplessis, Franny Duplessis, Ruan Josh. You've got Giselle, all Namibian Afrikaans performers who had to leave because there's no market there for it. It's not big enough for them to make a living, so they go elsewhere. Okay, folks. 2 hours and 12 minutes. It's now almost 6. I have to go back on to 3 hours. I haven't eaten today. Streaming started 6 minutes ago. What? What is that? Pork Prickly Pants just subscribe. Well, thank you for subscribing, and thank you for that fascinating username. Started 6 minutes ago. No, it didn't start 6 minutes ago. It started a long time ago. I think that YouTube is playing games. Let me see what this says.
Leg je voeten op, leg je voeten op, hop, leg je voeten op. Leg je voeten op, oh, leg je voeten op. Leg je voeten op, hop, leg je voeten op. Leg je voeten op, oh, leg je voeten op. En begin spring, spring, spring. Want liefde is een lied en jij moet zing, zing, zing. Oh, leg je voeten op en begin spring, spring, spring. Want die liefde is een lied, kom laat ons zing. Het is tijd dat ons meer dankie zegt. vir alles wat ons het. En vir die skoen aan ons voete en die klere aan ons lyf en die kossies wat ons eet. En dankie vir die werk waarin ek elke dag mag ry. Alles hier die plek se highways nie vir my. Leg jou voete op en begin spring, spring, spring. Want lewe is 'n lied en jy moet sing, sing, sing. Oh, leg jou voete op en begin spring, spring, spring. Want die lewe is 'n lied, kom laat ons sing. En dankie vir elke nuwe dag wat ons mag sien. En vir die hitte van die son wat skyn oor elke liewe een. En dankie vir die huis waarin ons woon hier in die stad. Al verlang ons na die stilte van die veld op dankie sien. Leg jou voete op en begin spring, spring, spring. Want lewe is 'n lied en jy moet sing, sing, sing. Oh, leg jou voete op en begin spring, spring, spring. Want die lewe is 'n lied, kom laat ons sing. Oh, die lewe is 'n lied, kom laat ons sing. Oh, die lewe is 'n lied, kom laat ons sing. Leg jou voete op, leg jou voete op, op, leg jou voete op, leg jou voete op, oh, leg jou voete op, leg jou voete op, op, leg jou voete op, leg jou voete op, oh, leg jou voete op, en begin spring, 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 want die lewe is 'n lied en jy moet sing, 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 oh, leg jou voete op, en begin spring, 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 want die lewe is 'n lied, kom laat ons sing. Oh, leg jou voete op en begin spring, 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 want die lewe is 'n lied en jy moet sing, sing, sing. Oh, leg jou voete op en begin spring, 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 want die lewe is 'n lied, kom laat ons sing. Oh, die lewe is 'n lied, kom laat ons sing. Oh, die lewe is 'n lied, kom laat ons sing. Oh, die lewe is 'n lied, kom laat ons sing. Laat ons sing.
You thought I'd left. Psych! I'm still here! All right, folks. Catch you later on. Have a good night. I'll be back this evening for the Republican National Convention. God bless. Have a good evening. Be safe. Never trust a commie. Never trust a cadre. All right, folks.